Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi, tout le monde, et bienvenue. Welcome to this Committee of the Whole in our new and improved council chambers. We are all so happy to be here and host our meetings in this room. I don't think any of us realized just how important this room is until we couldn't access it for a couple of months. A big thank you to the team at the Avenir Center for hosting us over the last few meetings. So you will notice a few changes, physical changes in the space. We have really clean carpet, for example, and these enormous screens up here. But the bulk of the changes are really involve new technology to improve the in-room experience and expand the experience for those who watch these meetings online. So as of today, all of our public meetings will take place in this room and will be permanently streamed live on the city's YouTube channel, and our handle is @CityVilleMoncton. Over the next few weeks, we ask that everyone is patient with us as we are all learning. We're starting off with the basics with this new technology, and we'll be adding additional features and improvements as we go. But some of the most interesting features at this time include seeing the agenda items and the voting results on the large screens in real time, improved translation services and devices, and improvements to the remote access for our meetings. Other improvements will be seen on the streamed version of the meeting so that people at home can follow the meetings and be engaged. I would like to say a very special thank you to Dusty Towers and his team in our information systems, Shelley Morton and her team in the clerk's office, and Brian Harper from our facilities department for their work and dedication to getting this project completed. It is a very complex project, but so far, we're all knocking on wood that it's all going to work out well. Also would like to say a huge thank you to our local team at Ivan's Camera who guided us through this process. So you will see a few less familiar faces. This is Dusty over here, and he's going to make sure if we have any last minute challenges, and there are a couple of other tech people you're going to see in the room that are going to make sure that this process is as smooth as possible. So thank you all, and again, ask for everyone's patience. With that, I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Your Worship, we have an agenda before us and there are no changes.
Thank you very much. To move the agenda, I have Councillor Bourgeois up first to move the agenda. Is that correct? Okay, I got to remember how to do that.
Just
okay, yes, go ahead.
One would be crosswalks and the other one would be democracy. And if so, I'll move the adoption.
Okay, and I have Councillor Edgett up next. Do you wish to second?
yes.
Yes. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, do we vote on that too? Okay. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
My apologies. We didn't put the mover and seconder. We'll do that next meeting.
Okay.
Conflict of interest, les déclarations des conflits d'intérêts.
I do not see any.
There are no adoption of minutes, and our new business for today. First up is a CRPA budget presentation that will be done by the CRPA chair, Don Moore. He's here to introduce everybody in the room.
Welcome, and yes, you are now.
I am on now. Thank you very much, Your Worship, and members of council and others that are here in the room this afternoon. I won't go through by name, but we have a number of people here from the Kodiak RCMP, and I think we have a little bit more than half of our CRPA actually here today as well. So I'll be doing the very first part of the presentation, and then I'm going to pass it over to our officer in charge, Benoit Gillette, and our Director of Strategic initiatives, I think that's the term, something, Charles Savoie. So from there. Do I advance the slides or right here from this? Okay. From there. That's a no. Oh, sorry, it's not here. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing here, so just give me a second. Okay, there we go. You have in front of you an agenda of what we're going to go through here this afternoon. I won't go through the highlights of the details of this, but this is what we're going to go through. Just a reminder, the CRPA is a group of volunteers, 12 people from Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe. So 7 from Moncton, 2 from Dieppe, 2 from Riverview, and then there's the province appoints 1 person, and that gentleman is actually here today, here with us, JJ. So from there, just as a reminder, to meet the changing needs of the community, the Kodiak Regional RCMP requires an additional $9.361 million in addition to last year's budget, and that represents a 19.61% increase from last year's budget. And I'll pass it over to our officer in charge to go through the details and how we've come up with this information. So Chuck and Ben. I've messed this up, so.
First of all, good afternoon, Mayor Arnold, councillors from Moncton, city staff, and guests that are here today. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the work that's been ongoing over the last months in the preparation of this budget. I'd like to thank the support of our members of our CRPA, but also from our staff that's here today. John, Sylvette, Debbie, Chuck specifically, and several others. So if we get into this, so we're talking about, the chair just spoke about a 19.61% increase from last year. Yes, I'll be the first one to say it. It's a big number. How did we get here? So the first thing that I'd like to clarify, if we look at this next slide regarding 2025, we're speaking about 17 new regular members, which bring us to about 4.11% of that 19%, and 5 new municipal employees. As council is aware, if there's any kind of growth in our regular members, there is a requirement for support employees, whether it be operational communications center, court administrative staff, and we'll go over that later on in the presentation. So what I'd like council to be aware of is if we look at 19.61% for the total budget, these 22 new positions, 17 regular members and 5 municipal employees accounts for exactly 5% of that 19.61. We'll go more into detail what the rest of the percentages are. Some of them are controllable, some of them are not by the supporting councils and by the RCMP. But what we need now, we need help and we need people. And this is about people helping people in a growing community, in the tri-community. And we're going to go further into detail exactly what we need and in comparing us to not only the rest of New Brunswick, but the rest of Canada and what got us to this and where exactly these people are going to be put so that we become a more effective police service. I'm going to pass it to Chuck for the next couple of slides.
You can move the slides. Good afternoon. Bon après-midi. So as you see in front of you, I guess there's the pie chart. So as Superintendent alluded to, I guess the new members, 17 new members and the new municipal employees account for about 5%. The rest would be a salary increase for the members, divisional admin, we've talked about that over the years. The new detachment lease makes up the rest of that pie. Now, one thing I want to speak about, I guess right from the get-go, I guess it's 17 members. The 1.9 million that you see there is a lower number than what 17 would usually cost you. The reason it's that low at this point is that we know that we're not going to get the 17 on January 1. It's going to take quite a bit of the year actually to get them in. So therefore, it's a much reduced cost. For 2026, just so everybody's clear, everything included for the carbines that are required, the vehicles, and the 17 members, you're looking at 4.5 million, not 1.96. So it's just a timing thing for those 17 for this year. So as you're looking at this budget, you have to look at what it's going to mean going forward in 26. So it's higher than what you see there, but the impact for this particular year, I guess, is what you see on the screen there. The same thing could be said for the rent. So the rent's this year it's 3 million, but we're only going to get into the building probably end of April 1st, April at this point. That's what they predict. So therefore, the rent is not as high as if we started in January. Next year, we'll have the full brunt all year for the rent. So 3 million this year, approximately 4 million next year for the whole year, right? So again, that will impact next year more than it is this year. Okay, so what have we done? If you remember, probably 2023, CRPA had requested 25 members at the time. There wasn't really a lot of justification. It was on the heels of a bunch of sessions that we had, town hall type meetings in the West End and a few others that caused us to sort of react, or the CRPA to react, that they needed traffic and everything else. We had provided a number just for traffic units and the like. At that point, based on the reaction that we got from all three councils, we knew that we needed to get a little bit more information, data, to drive that particular decision. So at that time, Kodiak had decided to provide workload, create its own workload, I guess, analysis. And this was also one of the recommendations that came in the Perryville and Taylor report. So those two things together meant that we put some money aside, I guess, in the past year so that we could actually create a workload and an operational plan. So those are the two things that have happened, I guess, this year, just past summer. We also had a comms plan because part of the operation plan, the feedback that we received was that comms had to be improved. We added a manager of comms, but that still wasn't enough. We needed to do even more. We heard it clearly, I guess, in our engagement with the community. And this, I guess, in the operation plan, part of that operation plan, obviously, we needed a workload analysis. We've had some prior PRMs, I guess is what the RCMP called. This one was more in depth, I guess. So we went through, and it was based on the pieces of the operational plan. So we'll go through the workload as we move on through. And finally, superintendent will go through the staffing plan that's related to the workload analysis and the operational plan. Perryville and Taylor. You guys are very familiar, I guess, with that. We'll just go quickly through it. The first three, the first one was a decision to keep the RCMP or as a service provider. The second one was, as we discussed, having the annual workload analysis. We have the structure in place now that we can do that every year. Internally, I guess we have the capabilities and the staff to be able to do that. And number three, I guess, to base staffing decisions on those business cases. The item 4, 5, and 6, I'll let the chair speak to that.
Thank you very much, Chuck. So item number 4, the recommendations, we plan to start that process in the springtime. Item number 5, we could basically mark this as complete. The CRPA has had the opportunity to, some of us attend sessions with the RCMP on learning about the mass casualty report, and CRPA members have been given the access to have training and some materials for such. Of the items in number 6, we feel at this point A and B are completed, and B would be starting for January 1st, but we have the model in front of the CRPA, and that's been approved. And item number C, hiring of the executive director, we are in the final stages of that process and hope to have something announced in the next few weeks.
Okay, so we'll start off with the operational plan. So the operational plan, we hired a company called PwC or PricewaterhouseCoopers, probably April of last year. And as you were probably all part of some of the engagement they had with the community, so that was all part of it. But some of the stuff that came back to us, I guess we had to consider, I guess, the population growth. If you're looking at probably the last 2 years, 5% each year roughly. And again, they predict that it's going to be about a 7% increase this particular year, the current year. So it is, Canada is one of the fastest growing, Moncton is one of the fastest growing areas, I guess, in Canada. But all that growth also brought in or emphasized even more some of the social issues, affordability, those types of issues. Use of food banks, I guess, have been up by 200%, I guess, in the area. So those are things that we needed to consider, I guess, in the operation plan. The public sentiment, I guess, it was interesting when it came through in our public engagement. Most of the public felt that Kodiak was doing very well, or were very positive towards the major crimes that the Kodiak were dealing with. So they were happy about the performance there. Where they weren't really happy about the performance was property crime. And everything that's kind of related to those things. So that's one of the things that we needed to focus on, I guess, on the operational plan and the staffing plan. The demand for police services, well, it's been growing quite a bit since 2014, about a 65% increase in calls for service. The budget amount for regular members hasn't kept up, obviously, with the calls for service. And we'll talk about that, I guess, in the next few slides. So what did we heard? Well, the main thing that we haven't covered in the last one was the comms area, I guess. So a few things. One, so customer service. When there were non-emergency calls, I guess, going to that line, they didn't really like the service. Had some difficulty, I guess, getting the responses that they wanted, friendly service, that kind of stuff. So we had issues, significant issues, I guess, around customer service via the telephone, I guess, via the call centers. And the other part, I guess, that we had issues other than that was the comms itself. How often we actually engage the population to see how they're feeling, what they're doing, where Kodiak should go, and the frequency with which the Kodiak, i.e. the superintendent, would communicate with them. So those are all things that we took away from those sessions. Next one. So the workload analysis. I know that you guys have been asking for a while. It was one of the recommendations in the Perryville and Taylor, and one that we've been working on for a few years. So the top 10 criminal code violations in the Kodiak area are the ones that you see here. So disturbing the peace, assault, that would be the lowest form of assault. I guess it's not, there's got varying degrees, that would be the lower one. So you'll see that all of the top 10 criminal code would be of the lesser degree, I guess. It's not murder and those types of things. But those are still the types of occurrences, I guess, that are driving our index, crime severity index. But you'll see that there's, so though from there, I guess, that's what was driving what we're looking at, the operational plan and our staffing plan, is to sort of see if we can deal with these better than we are now. The occurrence volume, well, I spoke to that a little bit, I guess, prior to. You can see the significant increase, about 44% there from 2017 to 2023. And you can see that most of the red, I guess, would be in the summertime, which is not a surprise to most. But you can see it's increasing year to year, I guess, as we go through. The operation plan, or the workload, I guess, provides us a whole layer of details, I guess, underneath that for each community, for each ward, that kind of stuff. Dispatch calls by service by hour. Some people think that it's probably weekends, I guess, that we would get a little busier. You can see here that it's not. I guess middle of the day, I guess middle of the week is basically when it would be busy. This also, you could have calls for service. I guess somebody only realizes that their shed was broken in on Monday, so they call it in on Monday. So it's not perfect, as in all data. There's some parameters, I guess, that could be moved around. But in essence, this gives you an idea of what the workload does provide. Cop to pop, or police par population. So this is where the cop to pop is not perfect, I guess, in as far as a way of determining how many officers you would need, but it is an important one. It is something we have to look at. You can see there that Kodiak is underneath the threshold. Kodiak would be in the black, I guess the black bar, and you can see the Canadian average and the New Brunswick average. But we know that to compare one force to another, even one RCMP to another, is not the easiest thing to do. RCMP to a municipal force is even more difficult, and between municipal force would be just as difficult. So we were below, I guess, a threshold, but we knew that that wouldn't be enough, I guess, to sort of show how busy we are, or if we're super busy. So a few more, I guess, to sort of clarify that picture. So the criminal code incidents per officer, that's, you can see here, I guess Kodiak again in the black, how busy the members are comparatively to some of the others. So that's a better picture, I guess, on how busy the members that we do have comparatively to other forces. Again, is it a perfect comparison between all the forces? It's almost impossible to have one that's exactly apples to apples. But as you add them on, it helps to create a picture that we can use. Crime Severity Index. Well, we've heard about that one before, and obviously PwC, we got them to focus a lot, I guess, on the Crime Severity Index, the CSI. You can see here, we're always much higher, I guess, than most. And you can see most of the higher ones are RCMP. We believe, and so is PwC, I guess this is the method of how we score different crimes. We'll show you in a few seconds there, I guess, on each crime has a weight and et cetera. So it compounds itself depending on the way that you do certain things. But we are clear, we do like this CSI KPI, if you will, but mainly to compare ourselves against at least RCMP, but at least to us, to ourselves. We should be dropping that number. That should be what we're doing year to year. But to try to compare our CSIs to another is difficult. Stats Canada is doing the right thing. They're getting the data, I guess, and they're actually producing the CSIs. That's what they do, and it works well. It's just a method in which you provide that data is different from force to force. And we'll give you a few examples. So before we get there, I guess this is the Crime Severity Index. This is for Kodiak. These are the occurrences that are driving our CSI to the number it is, one of the highest in Canada. So you can see there, breaking and entering, which is why we were talking about property crime a while ago, and you'll see the superintendent why we're going to focus on that area going forward. But most of these, you'll see, they're not severe crimes, I guess, or the high-ranking crimes. But if you look at the third column there, the cumulative weight, many of those have a substantial weight, that are fairly high. That break and enter is very high, but you have others, I guess, sexual assault level 2, have a lower weight than even the first one. And somebody breaking into a shed, for example, would still would hit that first category. So we don't decide the weights. That's Stats Canada, I guess, that decide what the weights are. But even those can be debatable, I guess, to a certain degree. But those are the ones that are driving the CSI here in Kodiak. So we mentioned a while ago, I guess, there's a big difference between how we do things, I guess, in RCMP and Kodiak. So you see here the population, I guess, between all the other municipalities in the province, population-wise against just the Kodiak area. And then you look at the total violations, I guess, all together. So we're almost having the same amount of total violations as all the other ones combined. Probably not the reality, I guess. It's just the way we score things and the way that the process works, that we have to score every single occurrence that happens. Might not be the case. It appears it probably not the case. We can't say for sure, but it does give you an indication. Here's a little bit more of the same. I guess if you look at property crime, again, Kodiak would have almost just as much as the rest of the population. Disturbing the peace, we have quite a bit more, way more, I guess, on disturbing the peace. Again, here we have a certain process to handle disturbing the peace. Other municipalities, looks like they have a very different one. And mischief would be, again, the same thing. That's a foreign property crime. We're higher than all the others combined. So that sort of explains a little bit, or points to a method of doing the work or the business or the process that affects, unfortunately, the CSI number. But it shows how busy, I guess, we are as well. It does both. So key priorities, I guess, measuring crime KPIs, we'll talk about that in a new detachment. The main thing, I guess, that was derived from the workload and the operation plan is a staffing plan. So we went through with them and said, look, these are the things that you're not as good as you should be. These are places that you're very good at. So when looking at the staffing plan, here's where we think you should put your people to make a difference. And here's what we think KPI-wise you should measure to see if you are making a difference year to year. So I'll get the superintendent to go get through the staffing plan that was proposed.
Thanks, Chuck. So if we look at the columns here in the table, it starts off with our comparables from this current year, 2024, all the way to 2031. Understandably that every year there's a staff area budget exercise where we meet with the CRPA, we evaluate the situation that we're in, and then present it to the three councils. This is going to be done every year. So even though there's mention of the 3 successive years leading to 46 new positions, we're focusing on year one, 2025. But still wanted to show council what our 3-year plan is and then moving forward as well too. And again, this is based on the evaluations that we've done and the workload analysis. So if we compare 2024 with the next year, the 2025, this is where we're requesting an extra 17 regular members, bringing us from a budgeted positions of 156 to 173. I'll go over all the other boxes. The next one where it says ODS, that is off-duty sick, but also people that are either on mat leave, pat leave, suspensions, people that aren't working every day. 2-3 years ago, we had implemented those extra resources to ensure that we had the budgeted amount that was working every day. So if you look at that column, if all the way down, it remains fairly similar with a slight increases. And the whole goal is to have a budgeted amount of 173, 26 extra people that are identified, because historically there always is between 20 and 30 people that are away, either on sick leave, paternity leave. And when these individuals are not at work, we only pay a very small fraction of their salaries. And when they're not there and then they're not replaced, that's where we end up in a salary surplus situation. We've had really good success over the last 2 years with this in ensuring that we had our budgeted amount that would show up every day for work. So the two columns we have to focus on is budget and the complement. So with a budgeted amount of 173, 26, an ODS team, or as we call it, a surplus to establishment, would bring us to a complement of 199. The JDIV column, where it's 13 all the way down, I've alluded to this at council in the past when we have a major incident where we need the helicopter, the emergency response team, or forensic specialists, or bomb techs. Everybody that's under the RCMP umbrella but has those specialty trainings and experiences that are not fully housed in Kodiak. Of course, we have people that are getting specialized in various roles, and we have people assigned to those roles. But when we have a violent incident, such as an individual barricaded in a residence with a firearm, we have the big red button that we could press, and our emergency response team or our tactical team will show up. So we accounted for that reliance on specialty units and members in our calculation for our cop per pops, or our members, police members per 100,000 population. So in including that 199 plus 13, 212, we're still below the New Brunswick average of 239 and well below the national average of 274. Successive years in our 3-year plan, in our operational and staffing plan, in 2026, an extra 15, 2027, an extra 14. And if we look at the two numbers that are in a yellow box, including our extra members, our complement, our J Division members, will bring us at 245, which would bring us to the New Brunswick average, comparing all other municipal police forces in New Brunswick and other RCMP detachments across the province. However, still below the national average. So, excuse me, if we look at the next 4 years where we have a little asterisk next to the one, in the PwC review and in speaking to our partners in the 3 municipalities, we've seen a massive explosion here. Where's it going to end? And is it going to keep on going? Will there be a plateau? So that's why after this first 3 years where we need to get to where we should be, it's going to be a period of reevaluation and seeing, well, what's next? Is it going to be a situation of staying the same, having a small number for population increase, or who knows what could happen? Maybe all of a sudden the population would decrease, would reevaluate at that point. So who do we need currently now to be more effective and do a better job? So we often hear in our community consultation meetings, in the media and at council, we always speak about boots on the ground and we need more people to do the work. So in the analysis by PwC and the work that we've done and the bench strength at Kodiak, where we suffer and we could do much better is in our investigations, as Chuck mentioned earlier, is actually taking a file, and we saw one of the previous slides that breaking and entering is accounts for 20% of our crime severity index. This is where we need to focus on. Actually develop people that can actually advance these files and investigate them accurately. So the bulk of the 17 members for 2025, 10 of the 17 would be in GIS or General Investigation Section, but in consultation with my command team, we're most likely going to rebrand this to sort of something that what the municipal police forces do, a criminal investigation division, where we really specialize our investigators to tackle the issues that are causing the most harm in a community. And it's as simple examples, for example, where there's a series of break and enters that's reported to us on a Monday morning. We could tap in straight to our investigators where they could formulate a team and focus on that right now, have the tools, the training, and the expertise to work on those files. Chuck mentioned sexual assaults earlier. It's the same type of incident. Right now, when a sexual assault is reported to us, it goes to our patrol members, and our patrol members who we would like them to be visible in the community out there and being proactive. They get bogged down in investigation because these are types of files that we have to put a lot of time and effort in. These are the type of files, theoretically and conceptually, that would go straight to our investigative division and would keep our patrol members on the road. Currently now, before I move on to the next, in our general investigation section, we haven't had a choice because of the major incidents that are going on in the community, stabbings, shootings, robberies, and unfortunately, a lot of the violent crime that comes with a growing community. We've had to second some of our patrol members to our GIS just to stay afloat. And I'll be honest with council, there's some files that we're struggling to get to and we're not getting to because we have to focus on the serious persons crimes and some of the property crimes such as frauds. These files are sitting on desks because honestly, we don't have enough people to get to them right now. We have to focus on the serious persons crimes. So the benefit in there would be increasing our investigational capacity, but also releasing some of our patrol members that are seconded to this team back to their teams to help out the members that are on patrol. The next is our community policing team. So Moncton Council would be very aware that 4 to 5 years ago, we had one person on community policing. It was Christy Elliott, and she would patrol with Manny up and down Main Street on tandem patrol. And we were just getting started. However, we've seen an explosion in the population with associated social issues. We've had to invest. We currently have 3 community policing positions, but 6 other members that are seconded from patrol. So again, that causes more work for our patrol members, more caseload, because some of the patrol members have to be on community policing because we can't turn a blind eye of what's going on in the community and the demands of the community, whether it be social issues, a partnership with schools, new arrivals, seniors, and just the local business community here in some of the presentations that we've done with them in de-escalation techniques with individuals who are living rough in the community. So again, an investment in our specialized support will be beneficial in us doing a better job on a daily basis, but also patrol members going back to patrol, being more visible and be able to support their teams. One position is for domestic violence. We currently don't have, like some other larger police services, a dedicated domestic violence unit or a dedicated persons crime unit. These are the types of things that we're going to work on, and Inspector Wright and Sergeant Hebert, we've already spoken about this and put a blueprint of where we see ourselves next year and in the years to come to really have people specialize in those positions. The next year in 2026, the large amount of the 15 extra members would be for a traffic services unit. So it's funny because in our community consultations and in discussion with council, these are the types of phone calls that you receive every single day and emails you get every day about people driving fast in your wards, and they want more visibility. They want more boots on the ground and more marked cars on the road. So that would have been perhaps an easy fix. However, we're really focusing the first year on our investigations and supporting everybody. However, still a definite need in our community with the growing population and just anybody can just take off from here and try to go to Dieppe in the afternoon. It's unbearable. And just the amount of people that are out there and a bunch of violations. We've seen the tremendous success from the Tactical Traffic Enforcement Unit when they come. It's $100 tickets a day with 3 or 4 of them. So imagine 10 members on traffic services, what we could do, the impact we could have, but not only that, every single traffic related call for service would get assigned to this team. Collisions, impaired drivers, suspicious vehicles, patrols in our school areas, so that our patrol members would be taking the weight and the workload taken off of their plates so they could become better investigators, better available, and to be more visible in the community. So the resounding theme throughout is invest in one place and it's beneficial for everybody at Kodiak, whether you're a regular member on patrol in a marked unit on general duty or a specialized investigator in GIS. Part of the, just because of the way the slide is, I'll go just to 2027, an increase, 2 more members on the traffic unit, 1 more investment on the community policing, excuse me, and then 4 members for cell services. That's actually our cell block. Currently now, some of our investigators every day have to take care of individuals who are in custody, and we're holding them for remand. So again, instead of investigating files, they're sitting by a phone waiting for a judge and a crown to call, sometimes for hours and hours, and sometimes the entire day on the weekend. And during the weekday, we have some of our patrol members that have to shuttle sometimes up to 12 and 15 people from our detachment to the courthouse every single day. Again, not being visible in the community, not investigating files. So we saw this as very important for the first year. However, it was one of our priorities, but we focused on other priority items and we put it in our third year of our plan. Finally, regarding regular members, for 2026, as mentioned earlier, 10 for a traffic services unit and 5 for a crime reduction unit. These are the members that work on the individuals who cause the most harm in the community, whether it be drugs, violent crimes, and property crime. And we're requesting an extra 5 to augment that team, and at which point we'll actually be able to give specific roles on a daily basis. As I've mentioned before, we're asked to do various things in the community, whether it be drug enforcement, property crime, open air drug enforcement, and like I've said, if we could have more, we would do more, but right now it's sporadic patrols and we do them when we can, but when there's a priority, we have to focus on that priority. So the goal there too would be to rebrand the crime reduction unit and have specific pillars that they could focus on. And again, have more results, be more visible, and have more of an expertise in their realm. Finally, for 2027, 7 extra members for serious crime unit. That's part of our red button that we have right now. When Kodiak RCMP is faced, God forbid, with a homicide, we do the initial work. However, the New Brunswick Serious Crime or Major Crime Unit is mandated to investigate homicides in the Kodiak area and attempted homicides. We've already started handling the attempted homicides on our own, building on our expertise and the people, the tremendous work that our people are doing. However, in the third year, it will be to eliminate the need to call in members of the Serious Crime Unit elsewhere in New Brunswick and focus on our own team. We've already started developing our people in those capacities, and it'll be essential because it's what I've said to council in the past. We want people to show up in Kodiak, live in our community, and be proud of their community and know your community. So the homicides that we've resolved here and working in partnership with our Major Crime Unit, we've seen that the best results is because of the amazing work that our teams are doing. Every single one of Sergeant Abad's investigators knows exactly where every camera is in Moncton. We know exactly where to go to start building that evidence. And we know our people, we know our suspects, we know our witnesses, we know business owners. So augmenting our investigational capacity that way. Chuck's going to speak a little bit about the municipal employee, because as I said, anytime that you build more regular members, we have to augment with support employees.
Okay, so on this slide, I guess I just want to put some emphasis on the investigational aid. So as the superintendent mentioned a while ago, 2026, 2027, as you go further, it gets a little bit murkier, I guess, as you move that way. In 2025, those 2 investigational aids, for example, would probably, it's a pilot project. We'll put those 2 in. We figure that we're pretty sure that they'll be very successful, and that will probably mean a reduction in the number of members we need in 2026. We can't predict that 100%, but we think that's what's going to happen. The fact that they're working every day with the teams should allow the members to continue to be on the road and work more sustained, I guess, out on the road. So if that is successful, we would continue that investigative program, I guess, going forward, and that would probably affect the number of regular members that you would require in the years going forward. So there is some innovation, I guess, that we're looking at. That's part of the PWC. And the workload analysis, I guess that was in there. I'll give you another one, I guess, for the traffic unit, I guess, in 2026. If you're looking at the red light cameras and the speed cameras, we don't know how that's going to affect that, but we're looking into that, I guess, and see if that would have an impact, I guess, on the traffic unit. So a whole bunch of stuff, I guess, that's continuously happening that will impact 2026, 2027, and years going forward. But the investigational aid is one that we have identified for 2025 that we predict will be very efficient and effective, I guess, for us. The rest, I guess, that you see, I guess, the customer service, well, we mentioned how it was clear that we needed to improve that area so that's what that was for. And the victim services is actually related to the mass casualty, I guess, in Nova Scotia. That was also identified by PWC that we needed to improve a few areas, I guess, in that area.
So if you look at the next years, again, we're focusing on 2025, but just to give an aperçu of what the positions we're looking at. Again, investigational aids, and just a little bit more on that. So in my previous service, when I was posted in Ottawa from 2012 to 2014, I had the pleasure of working in investigational aids. These are not police officers. They're skilled municipal employees, but might have a background in analytics, languages, or whatever. And these are people that would be working on every shift with our patrol members. And again, it's to ensure that our members spend as much time as possible on the road. So if there's documentation that needs to be done for a file, scanning of all documents before it's prepared for court, this is what our investigational aids will be doing. So they would start working efficiently with their team in their rotation and get better and better, faster and faster so much so that it would become an automatic relationship, and they would know exactly what the members need in their files and vice versa. So we're really excited about that, and we've been speaking about this for years, and we see that as an essential position. The other ones, as you'll see, an increase in OCC operators, which is normal with the amount of calls for service and more members out there on the road, and more court section employees. As I presented to council in the past, we have 5,000 to 10,000 court files per year. We have more members, we'll have more court files. We need more people to be doing those. That's it. I'll let Chuck speak about KPIs.
Okay, so one of the things that came out of the workload, I guess you saw the staffing plan or the KPIs. So how do we show that we're improving, I guess, with these new staff people, members, I guess, inside? So if you recall, the CRPA had probably well over 40 KPIs, which was much too many. We really couldn't concentrate on the ones that were required, so there's just too many of them. So PwC, one of the things that they did was to actually go through those and suggest some that would actually measure our performance on those where we're adding staff and where we should be improving. Places like response times, solvability rates, those types of things. We've got a list now separated in two, one that will be public facing, the other ones are internal because we always had internal KPIs as well. We went through all those, which ones we should add, which ones we should delete. But we haven't shared those with the CRPA yet. So in probably the next week or so, we'll have a couple of things, I guess, that would be beneficial for our council. One, we'll have a multi-year plan, financial plan, because so that you can see the full impact of, for example, we talked about the rent in 2026. We talk about the 17 members in 2026, January, where you have the full cost. All of those would be put in. You'd have the actual for the last 2 years. You can sort of see where it's going. But the full impact of 2026, I guess, when you get the full member. So you will get that package, I guess, financial package. This will also include the KPIs that will go with that. You'll also get a document on the workload. So we can't share everything with council and even with the CRPA, but the things that we can, we're going to put together, and you'll have a package included with that. And the last portion, I guess, would be our engagement schedule, I guess, for next year. So we'll have town hall meetings, I guess, in review, a couple of months in, all the way through the year that are scheduled so that we can get this type of feedback on an ongoing basis. So you'll get that coming forward.
And again, to add to that, we've seen there's people that want to come to these meetings and they want to tell their story. Some people are frustrated, they're angry, but a lot of people also they want that connectivity and say, oh, okay, I had no idea that that's what was going on with the RCMP and in the community and policing in general. And we've seen some initially 2-3 years ago where it was a little bit less constructive, but became constructive and led to some positive things. And then we've seen some in the North End where it was very constructive and we had some really great ideas because we don't know anything, we don't know everything. And we need to be out there and know exactly what's going on in the community, but why wait until there's a specific issue in our neighborhood or on a street? So we're gonna schedule these proactively throughout the year so people will know, oh, okay, great, the police are really interested in what's going on in the community, and we are, but show it to them and have that connectivity instead of just waiting for a community policing member to attend a school or wait for a request to come in from the community, or there's a big issue. So having those throughout the year, I think is going to be very positive, and surprised we didn't think about this before, but PwC was very clear on this, that it'd be one of the very positive things for our communication strategy.
So new attachment, I guess, just to go quickly over that, looks like it was April 1st, looks like it might be April 25th, the last I've heard. So might have lost a month there, I guess. So everything's going well. It probably takes about 3 months for us to move in once we get the keys, other than the OCC 911, which would take a little bit longer because we need 3 or 4 months of testing for the 911 to be able to get in there. So the budget highlights, very similar to what we've already gone through, I guess, on the very right, I guess you'll see in bold, I guess, the main components, I guess, of the increase. So you'll sort of see that. The finance team, I guess, here at City Moncton have obviously have the full budget. And when we will, like I mentioned, provide a 3-year, multi-year plan, I guess, in the next probably 2 weeks, within the next 2 weeks. So in time for you guys to deliberate. So you'll see there, I guess, that 9.3 million, I guess, or 19.61%. Again, for this year, I guess you're looking at about a 5% for all the new staff, which will be more. We're fully, like the superintendent said, it's a big number. We're fully aware. But many of those we have little control, I guess, over. Some we do have some. This one here, we just wanted to add that in again, just for clarity. Typically, if we have a deficit or a surplus in any given year, that surplus or deficit is pushed back 2 years down the road. We don't deal with it right away. It's 2 years. So the year coming up, we had a deficit 2 years ago. So we're going to start the year, I guess, in the red. And then we have to deal with it. So on top of the increase that we are requesting, unfortunately, 2 years ago, we had a deficit based on the Sonia murders, a whole bunch of different things that happened 2 years ago. So this gives you from last year to this year, including that deficit, what that number would be. Typically, when we present here, we only present year to year. We don't include a surplus or a deficit so that we can actually show you one to the next. But I wanted to be clear, I guess, that it will be a bigger number this year because we started with a deficit to start 2026. Right now, we know that in 2 years from now, we have a surplus probably. So we'll be in the black to start the year and be an easier year that year. But for just to be transparent and full of clarity, we wanted to show that.
So again, just to break it down, and council has seen these numbers. It was one of our first slides. So again, I'll be honest with council. Yes, it is a big ask. It's a big number. However, 5%-ish for our new staff. And it's based on workload, and it's based on our people and requiring more people to serve the people in our community. The big building is a big amount too. And for those that have seen our current facility and the new facility, it's going to be tremendous for our people, a boost in the morale. I just had young members today speaking to me about the mouse that they took out of the in back of the photocopier in the bullpen this morning. And like people show up and they're happy and they're smiling and they still do a great job and they work hard. But one young member this morning, about 1.5 years, 2 years, he says, "Oh my God." He goes, "I drove by it the other day. It looks amazing. I can't wait. It's all going to be new and it's going to be fun and it won't stink." And it's just going to be that boost to the morale. It's going to be tremendous. It's a very large budget item. It's been approved for a while, but we can't wait. So it's part of that nearly 20%. So the last thing that I want to say is, again, I feel that I've been as honest every chance that I get with Moncton Council, and I'll continue to be honest, and I have nothing to hide. Is like we need people to do the work right now. Is we have enough to answer 911s and answer emergency calls, but we're sporadically throwing people on everything that's being asked from us from the community and from residents, whether it's dealing with social issues. Like I said earlier, schools, seniors, new arrivals, proactive work. I said this earlier in Alan Cochrane wrote it down where I said we're hanging by a thread. We are right now. And we need people to make sure that the tri-community is safe. And as a future retiree in this community and my daughter growing up in this community and hopefully finding work, I want my future to be safe and secure and have an effective police force in the tri-community. I want my daughter to have a safe home. And I'm sure residents want the same thing. We've heard them. Residents want a more effective, more visible, and stronger police service. and this is exactly what we need. So again, it is a very big ask, but the Kodiak RCMP needs your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent, and to Chuck and to Mr. Chair. First up, I have Councillor Daniel Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci énormément à vous trois pour la
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you to all three for your message. I feel way better informed. I have about half a dozen questions. I'm going to ask them in one after the other, but I thank you in advance for providing your response.
This council approved the hiring of 5 additional RCMP members. The discussion we had at council was that these 5 additional RCMP members would be affected to the downtown West End area because that's where most of the minor crimes were occurring, which was driving the crime severity index and the crime index that made us number 3 in Canada. What happened to those 5 RCMP members we gave you to patrol the downtown and the West End? Did they indeed, in fact, patrol the downtown and the West End, or were they affected somewhere else to do some other things?
Oh, thank you, Councillor Bourgeois. So any member that's supported for Kodiak Regional RCMP is a Kodiak Regional RCMP member who's responsible for all 3 communities. So when we were dealing with those specific situations, there were specific patrols, projects, teams that were working in those specific areas, but no specific 5 or 10 are dedicated for one specific area. So.
Yeah, and that's the Police Act that gives you the power to direct operational manpower, women power, human resources, wherever you deem it. But my question flipped around, and je prends pas ça négatif, là, okay? C'est pas négatif, mais
I don't mean to be negative, but it's a matter of trust. If you're asking for a certain number of RCMP members, so for the traffic unit, everybody agrees on that, etc. So how do we make sure we can trust you on the fact that you're going to use those resources that way, and that you won't do like you've done in the past, where we approve new resources and then you get to decide what to do with them? How can we have assurances as to the fact that the additional resources that we'll give you will enable you to do what you say you need to do? Well, I think I understand your question better now. Like Mr. Savoie said earlier, 2 years ago, we asked for 25 additional members, which was not approved, in spite of us mentioning that we needed them. So we had an approval for 5 additional RCMP members, but we did not specify where these people would be working. We needed to fill a certain number of gaps, and that's where our people would be called upon to work. That's how they're going to be assigned. So we have a staffing plan, is a commitment for us to do certain things. We can't just do whatever we want with 7 additional RCMP members. Because if you'd ask me how many new members I would like to have, for sure I would have preferences. But 2 years ago, truth be told, the decision was made as a response to demand from the population without the required data to know exactly where those resources would be needed. But now we have this data and we can commit to assign those resources to specific issues or areas. So to conclude on that, it's just a presentation. No decision will be made today. It will be made later. So this is not JEB, this is not Riverview. I got that approved those 5 extra RCMP members. The city of Moncton gave you the approval for those 5 extra people. And we wanted to target the downtown area and the West End area because we knew, empirically speaking, not necessarily based on data, But we know that the large majority of minor crimes is committed in the downtown area and in the West End area. So we basically signed a blank check for you to hire 5 extra RCMP members. And now we realize that people are not assigned to those areas. So when you apply for funding, while I cannot approve a budget, having that in mind, if I don't have assurances that you're going to do what you're saying you're going to do with the monies that are given to you, because it was very clear 2 years ago, those 5 RCMP members would be for patrol units in the downtown area and West End area. And I'm pretty sure this is not happening today, but I'm going to conclude on that because I have other questions that need a response.
Dans vos graphiques, dans vos tableaux.
My second question, and you showed it in your tables, you showed Surrey and BC, Peace River in Alberta, other communities. You said that they have fewer RCMP members. They do have the RCMP, though Peace River is transitioning to a municipal force. They have the RCMP, but there are fewer per population because they hire social workers, they hire psychologists, because just like us,
Criminel.
a large part of the increase of the crime rate is small crimes, minor crimes, mischief, those kind of crimes
Habileté, puis c'est pas une reproche à la GRC.
can be handled by by psychologists or social workers. And I'm not criticizing the RCMP. You're not trained in the same way as a social worker or a psychologist in this. So they use people who cost a lot less than $150,000 per year that the RCMP is costing. And the workload analysis that you mentioned clearly demonstrates that this is the kind of issue that has increased, that makes up, not the majority perhaps, but makes up the largest part of your calls for service.
Vous avez
So
GRC ou peu importe.
does the CRPA or the RCMP or whomsoever, have you considered possibly, instead of increasing the number of members by 25 RCMP members, but hiring social workers or psychologists to look after 30% of these problems that are better dealt with than by RCMP members? Yes, that has been assessed. Okay, perhaps I'm the one who was wrong, but I didn't see the hiring of psychologists or social workers in your plan. Well, these are things we can do. We can do pilot projects, but our work is investigating crimes. So these are things we can do in partnership. We did put money aside, for example, in 2024, in this year, to launch a pilot project with staff members who'd go meet people out on the street. But we also tried to launch pilot projects with social worker, but our job is to investigate crimes. And there's a certain number of responsibility on the backs of other levels of government as well, the municipal, the provincial, and the federal government as well. Oh, and I understand that. That's completely logical. It's not your problem, and the CRPA is limited by its mandate. Legally, this is what you can do, and you can't do social work or psychology and so on. But this is something that council should look at to decide, and this is the question. Would we be better able to address these social issues, to respond to them, and to solve them with social workers and psychologists than with a greater number of police officers? And it's not your mandate. It would be up to us. And I don't know how to do this because we don't work in social work or psychology either. But we are in the business of crime and police services, and you are affected by this, and you have to ask for a greater number of members because it's your way of seeing things, and I understand that. But I don't know if it's the solution, because I'm looking at what they're doing in Surrey and Peace River and other municipalities in Canada as well. They hire social workers and psychologists. So I'll withdraw my question, but I will put it to members of council. We're going to have to talk about this. And quickly, very quickly, because budget is coming up and we're being asked for a phenomenal increase in our police budget, whereas in my opinion and in the opinion of experts, that's not where we should invest. We should invest elsewhere because of the workload analysis and the statistics. My third question for the CRPA, I think. Mr. Moore,
Au gouvernement du Nouveau-Brunswick,
have you asked the government of New Brunswick to support the city of Moncton in its request that the community officers become peace officers?
that our community officers be given the status of peace officers, which entails a lot more power to intervene in social issues cases. We were given different feedback from the RCMP. The first reaction was that they were opposed to it. And then when the committee that Councillor Butler and Councillor Leger and I, on behalf of council, sent a request to the RCMP provincially, and they said, no, we don't have any issues with that. So we've been given two different feedbacks. I think if we can convince the government to allow our bylaw officers to become peace officers with the additional powers, that would be a very good thing and could replace some, if not most, of the RCMP officers that are being requested, including traffic enforcement, which is what they do in Peace River and Surrey, BC. So have you intervened at all in terms of supporting our request for peace officer designation?
The short answer is no. We've not received any request to participate in such from any of the three municipalities at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Quatrième, cinquième question.
My fourth and fifth questions, I'll combine them. Chuck will probably be the one to answer. Do you have measurable objectives? For example, if we go to move from the third worst municipality in Canada to the 10th worst, for example, in Canada in the next 10 years, I mean, no matter what, we're going to reduce the crime rate by X or so on. The overall, we're the third worst city in Canada for the crime rate. Do we have anything that will say that will move from third to the 10th within the next 3 years or 5 years? Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, we have KPIs that we will give you. And one of them is the crime rate index. And it's not to go down compared to others, it's to go down compared to ourselves. As I mentioned, it's difficult to compare with others because it's difficult to determine why we're third or fifth. I think it's a question of the process, the way it's determined. So it's much easier to measure, to compare ourselves to ourselves. We should be able to bring it down. And we're going to have KPIs that will really push that number to go down. I don't know if we can do it, if we can compare it to ourselves to others, even to other RCMP detachments, because I think it would be very, very difficult because it's almost impossible. But in your presentation, you presented other municipalities. So if we compare ourselves to other municipalities, I would like us to compare ourselves for that home run number as well. Okay, well, we'll see if we will get there. However, I do hope that you won't set objectives. How shall I say this? That you have objectives that are not ambitious. Okay, we've gone down by 1% a year. Yay, we've gone down. But no, 1% isn't enough. Do we expect to go down by 10% over 3 years, for example? Yeah, in the KPIs there will be targets, and the CRPA will tell us it's not, I mean, we'll deliberate on, we'll discuss this to see if it's high, you know, what level it is, but there are other methods that can be used that would be better, more representative of the crime rate. So we'll look at all of that as well. There are other countries and other areas, other countries as well as other areas of Canada, the States, that use other techniques. So it might be worth looking at. So we don't think that the border isn't realistic, but we're going to continue working with the CSI, and we're going to continue to set targets that I hope will be useful. Okay, and I understand. I'm not expert in police services, but I am an expert in the receiving complaints from citizens who are affected, and I represent Ward 2, and that's where the crux of the matter is. I mean, not only, but you've shown it in Perryvale, and Taylor showed it in their graphs, in their maps. That's where things are happening, and that's where people are upset. And I don't blame them. It's been 5 years now. People are robbed, and you know, we lost a picnic table, which isn't the end of the world, but other people have lost a lot more than that. And my second question for you, Mr. Savoy, are you going to measure people's perception? Because I don't go to the downtown anymore because I'm afraid. I mean, statistically, it might be true. We had the researcher from the University of Moncton, Véronique Chatillon, I forget her full name. Yes, thank you. And she showed that the perception of people varied, not unreasonably perhaps, but surprisingly. In the northeast of the city, that's where the people were most afraid, where their perception of crime was the worst, but that's not even where the crime rate is highest. The crime rate is highest in the downtown area rather. But in your strategic plan, are you going to measure the subjectivity, the perception people have? Well, yes, so we've done that in the past. You know, do people feel safe, their sense of safety? And we're going to continue doing that, but we'll also add other ways of measuring it. We'll go do face-to-face interviews in this, but also on the internet, we'll do surveys. And sometimes the perception is very, very different from the reality. Thank you. My last question, excuse me. In one of your slides where you were showing the budget, you showed something on the 10% federal grant. It seemed to be a negative figure. Could you explain what you meant? Are we going to get more money because of this 10% because our population is going up? Or could you explain that? Yeah, sure. It's compared to last year. The budget is higher by 19% this year. So the grant will be higher from the federal government. That's what it means. So that's in all the negative, that's a positive point. Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Oh, here. That work?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thanks very much for the presentation of, wow, a lot to absorb, right? I guess the superintendent statement of hanging by a string, that's wow, that's quite the statement. So from looking at it and having a little bit of experience in policing, we are going to put 10 members in general investigations to try to catch up on these files because there's some files that haven't even been touched. Is that correct?
That's part of it. It's for us to investigate better on a daily basis in all of our investigations.
Yeah, true. So what we're saying is that there are files coming in that have to be investigated. I would hope that they've always been doing the investigations to the best of their ability. So I'm sure that what we're asking really for is more members because there's more files to be investigated. Would that be correct?
Yeah, more files, more complex, and we've had to pull people from the road to give them to the investigative services because we need people to investigate those files. Our residents look to us, victims and witnesses, to do a good job. And Like, that's why like proactive work, when these files come in that we have to work on, whether it's a property crime, person's crime, like everything else gets dropped. And the things that we're dropping and some of the proactive things that that we're asked to do, that we have to focus on investigating those files. And we're asking more and more of our people at Kodiak. And again, extremely proud of the people. We got an awesome team at Kodiak. They do an incredible job, but they need more support.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's questioning how good the men and women are on the street for what they have. But I look at the budget for 2024 and then you go to 2025, it's 10 million, 9 point something, so we'll go 10 million. But, you know, I'm trying to figure out, so what do I tell the residents of Moncton is how's that's going to affect the crime rate? So it looks like right now, but when I look at this, there shouldn't be much of an effect on the crime rate that first year because we're just playing catch up with everything that's left behind. So if you're putting people in investigations, so when we had them community meetings in the West End, we had 2 or 3, and we had one in the North End, and I think one at Harrison Trimble for that area. And one of the things they asked about, and I don't know close enough here, one of the things that they asked about was more proactive policing. So in other words, they'd like to see more, and I'm kind of disappointed that we're at this stage that any member that we hire now has to go into the plain clothes, into the investigation section, because they're asking for more proactive policing out on the streets, in the subdivisions, regular patrols. What I see here is like a 19.6% of an increase. And I don't see how this is going to make much, and you can explain how this is going to make much of a dent this first couple years in the crime rate.
Great. So as I indicated earlier, Councillor Butler, we're investing there in our investigations so that we have more horsepower to investigate files and our community policing team. And currently we have almost 10 people that are seconded from our patrol teams into these investigative teams. So those 10 people aren't out in a marked police car being proactive and being visible in the community. So investing in our investigative services will do a better job. We'll increase our solvability rate, which is the lowest in the province, and low compared to the rest of Canada. And by releasing people that are seconded to these investigational and specialized teams, we'll have more people for patrol, for Inspector White's team, that are available to patrol in every single neighborhood and every single street and be proactive and do traffic services and school patrols, what have you, in the first year. But to your point, where you said we won't get those results, January 2, because if this is supported, there has to be a staffing plan and we have to find these people. So it's going to be cadets at Depot or New Brunswickers that are working across Canada that want to come back home. And now we say, hey, we got 17 new spots to fill. So it's going to be very exciting for that. It's going to be a boost of morale for our people as well, too. They're going to be like, wow, we've been supported. Life is really cool here and I want to go to work and I'm going to be even more proactive. And I'm going to work even harder on a daily basis. So it's positive all around.
But I think though, you know, to be fair to that statement though, Superintendent, just because a guy's in Alberta and maybe, you know, in whatever place, and he says, hey, there's an opening in Kodiak, he's still going to be released from that area. It's not just, hey, I'm going to New Brunswick, I'm going back to Moncton. It wouldn't be as simple as, I wouldn't want people to think that, well, they're going to put my name in, I'm gone. Like, there's a little bit more to it than that.
There is, but in the last 2 years, with the uncertainty that was happening in the tri community with the future of the RCMP, a lot of people wanted to stay away from Kodiak. So now that's our job to sell Kodiak RCMP on a national level to get them to come.
That's great. So my next question is that when I looked at one of our slides here, the DIV administration costs is almost the same as our new detachment costs. And if you go down to another slide that you had, like, it seems like our indirect costs are going up steady. And that's not, no blame to Kodiak or to CRPA. That's a provincial thing, and I understand that. But here's the point that I've always argued, is that we have a 90-10 split with the federal government, and the province has a 70-30. Is that a correct statement that I'm making? Okay, so as long as that's on record. So here it is. So we put money into administration J division, and that helps the whole province. I hope, would that be a right statement? So in other words, if somebody's off sick in Shipican, we help with that pie. Somebody's off in St. Stephen's, that's a part of, per member we pay to,
Yeah, so the dividend is divided in essentially two things. So one would be to support headquarters, those types of things,
Like-
training, recruitment. And the other half would be for members that are off sick more than 30 days.
Yeah.
They go into this provincial role, I guess.
that's exactly right, yes. So we help with that. That's what I'm trying to say. With our, is that a correct statement?
That we pay in that, and we also benefit from some of the 70-30 contracts. We have SLAs or service level agreements with J Division. So we sort of piggyback on their 70-30 deal.
Well, we don't piggyback too much when it's 90-10. What I'm saying is that I don't think it's fair to us to be paying that much in admin. Maybe it's fair to pay it, but I think that what we should be doing is that everybody else in this province is 70-30 with the RCMP except for us. We're the 90-10, or is there somebody else set in 90-10 in this province? No, I
I don't
believe.
think so. I could find out, but the majority would be.
But
Yeah.
when you think about, if Riverview was off by themselves, they'd have a 70-30 because of their, if they're level.
Potentially,
They were before they came on, so they were never 90-10 with us. But what I'm saying is that I believe that we as a council, or we as a CRPA should be asking the province and asking the federal government to sit down and look at this again. Because, we're doing the 90-10, but everybody else is doing the 70-30, and we have to pay into the same pot, and we don't get as much money back. That's what I'm trying to say. We have to pay into depot for the recruits, and we also have to pay into the dog section to have that working. So, there's a lot of costs that we're doing that when we go southeast even for the dog. I mean, there's one dog, a couple from Moncton, but if Southeast needs it, they get it. But we're still paying that 90-10 ratio. That's what I'm trying to say. And I still believe that we should be, if everybody else is doing 70-30, Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe should be paying the 70-30 also. That's just something that I would put forward to that. I'm very glad that you've got the workload analysis. I guess my disappointment would be is, as superintendent was, I would have loved to seen the 10 people go into a proactive policing out in a traffic section first, because I get more calls about traffic section than I do anything else. And I think a city this size needs to, even if it was 5 and 5, and the Councillor Bourgeois' point, I realize that if we give you 17, your decision is how you put them, and I understand that. But I would seriously hope that if there is something that we could do with, to motivate council to accept this 17, would be that we have some type of an agreement, or at least look at the fact that some of these members would go into a traffic and some would go into general investigations. I'll leave that with you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Next up, Councillor Steves.
Well, thank you, Mayor Arnold. Thank you, Ben. I think these questions will probably be for you. I think I have 3. Didn't know Brian was going to ask that question at the very end. That was going to be my question. Ben, there's a lot of discernment that would go into how to use 5 officers or 17 officers this time around. I'm curious, who's around the table that makes that decision for slide number 27 of the 10, 6, and 1 breakdown? Who makes that decision? That's my first question.
so it was the whole process of the review by PwC and the building of the operational plan. So it was looking at what we do on a day basis right now, what we do well, what we could do better, community consultations, speaking to council, speaking to community partners, speaking to our members, and all the analysis that was put in it. Because to Councillor Butler's point, if we would decide where our members go based on the keyboard warriors that send you messages and send us messages, yeah, we would say, okay, let's put them on a traffic team, whatever. But the most efficient use of those resources, year one, we have to tackle our solvability rate that we're very low. We have to tackle on investigating property crimes, persons crimes in our community, because that's what drives up our crime severity index. And by creating positions in these teams, like I said, we have up to 10 people that are seconded there on assignment. They're back on patrol, so we do get that proactive work, because then if we fill these positions, the specialized policing positions, then I go back to John and I say, hey, John, the 10 members that have been on secondment, they're back on your teams. That's 2 per watch. There's 2 people that can support their teams, lower their workloads, and be more proactive and be more visible in the community.
Okay, so thank you. So ultimately then, it's your call based on feedback you're receiving?
Yes.
Is that fair? Okay. And so then my second question would revolve around the traffic unit and just some of your thinking on that. Of course, I want to be an advocate for traffic, but again, it's really hard to discern where you want to lean into because each area is very, very important. I would assume that when you are to start a traffic unit in a new city, which would be ours, there's a lot of kinks to work out. And so I would just ask, why not have 2 or 3 begin a traffic unit or the beginnings of a traffic unit in 2025 so that you'll be even more effective in 2026 with it already starting rather than starting clean in 2026? What are some of your thoughts on that, and going to general investigation down to 7, even 7-3 split would probably mean a lot to the community?
So yeah, we thought about that as well too, but when you sprinkle smaller amounts in certain areas, you have less of an impact. And let's just say hypothetically, we'd say, yeah, we have 3 people on traffic services. People aren't robots, they can't work 24/7, so then you'd have maybe 1 working Monday to Thursday on shifts. So then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's nobody there and less of an impact. So again, it would just be sporadic, similar to what we're doing right now is, right now of the almost 180 complement members that we have at Kodiak, 180 are traffic members. So in between calls for service, they're doing traffic enforcement. Like we still give between 300 and 500 traffic tickets a month in the tri-community, and that's just going call to call and when the radio stops screaming. And so we're visible sporadically in certain areas. So the reason we decided, no, we're going to go strong on community policing because we've had secondments in there for 5 years and investigations is because that's the data that was presented to us. And in consultation, we said that's where we're going to have the most impact because having a police car pull over somebody for a stop sign or properly and effectively and speedily investigating somebody who their life has been turned upside down by having their garage broken into. And having that investigator that's there and being able to meet with them and investigating that effectively and potentially looking for charges.
Okay. That would probably be a good message to your social media and whatnot, that there's probably an impression in the community that without a traffic division, there's no real traffic focus. And even saying the amount of tickets that are given out, might help that narrative. That's all. Okay, my third question, then I'll be finished, is again on this slide number 27, regarding the 6 that would be increasing in the community policing piece. How many would you say currently are on the community policing file? And then we're adding 6 to that. And what would that mean for our community in 2025?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's just to sort of reiterate, we currently have 3 actual full-time positions. We have 6 other people that are seconded there from a patrol, just so that Again, 3 people, it'd be sporadic. We'd have maybe visibility 3 or 4 days a week, but the social issues is a 24-hour issue. So now with our secondments from people that are on patrol, we can actually have 7 days a week and working with our partners, whether it's the city of Moncton, town of Riverview, city of Dieppe, and all the other community policing type of partners, reconnect the shelters. So with this investment, it would bring our team from 3 to 9, and then the second one in 2027, bringing us to 10, where we could have 2 full teams. The issue too that we saw is that members need supervision and oversight to make sure, hey, we are going to these presentations. We are checking the 47 homeless camps with the city of Moncton, with the community safety officers, and we're keeping tabs on people and directing people to services. So the increase in those positions would be another supervisor position, 7 days a week, have members available to deal with these issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Councillor Crossman.
Thank you, Your Worship. All three of you, thanks for the presentation.
Conseiller Crossman, merci. Madame la mairesse, merci pour cet exposé.
Weeks ago in Dieppe. So I was glad to be there to get, I guess, the first vision of it, I'm going to say. Superintendent, or actually, I'll go to Chuck first, Superintendent, before I have some questions for you as well. Chuck, during the discussion on this previously, there was talk about a surplus for 2024. Is that, and I was there in the room, so I'm just curious to know, is that surplus still on the books? Because the literature that I picked up that evening shows a surplus for the RCMP, pending surplus for the RCMP. And I'd like more explanation on that because it was close to 2.8 million if I look at my numbers. So I'm curious how we go from a deficit to a surplus back to a deficit, because I think the people at home really deserve an answer as to why there's a surplus and why there's a deficit.
So I think that the document that you're referring to, I guess, is the surplus in current year.
Yeah,
Yes.
in your budget.
Yeah. So it's coming, and that's what I mentioned a little bit earlier. In 2 years from now, when we buckle up this year, current year, in 2 years, we will have a surplus. So we would start the year in the black, and then we'd add the budget to it. This year, the one that we're looking at for 2025, we actually have a deficit from 2 years ago. So we start the year in the red, and then we add this budget on top. So you're correct. Right now, we're looking at things can change, but it looks right now that we have a surplus, significant surplus coming up, mostly due to vacancies and stuff like that this year. So it looks like we will have a surplus, a healthy surplus, that will apply to the budget in 2 years from now.
Okay, and when you talk about a surplus having vacancies, that's where you're gathering. Why are we having vacancies if one of your slides shows that we have so many members that are supposed to be accounted for on a day in and day out basis that the tri-community is budgeting for?
I think the superintendent can probably answer, but essentially the vacancies, typically we'd run about 3 to 4% a year, I guess, vacancies, people that are coming. They're not new positions, they're just vacant positions, people moving in and out. Typically about maybe 3 or 4% typically in a normal year in the past years. In the last year, current year, it's probably running around 12%, so much higher. Whole bunch of, it's been like that kind of since the COVID, since that hit. But also the uncertainty, I guess, around the Kodiak area, I guess, and if RCMP was going to continue and all that kind of stuff, actually impacted that kind of flow that was coming in. And the other is that the province, I guess, J Division itself, actually added quite a few positions. 81 positions, I guess it came
We
in.
can touch that. So yeah, roughly just under a year and a half ago, government in New Brunswick approved 81 new positions across all of New Brunswick in the provincial RCMP areas, excluding Kodiak. And again, that was based on lack of growth over the years, whatever. So it was spread around all the other districts. So in that last year or so, the focus on filling vacant positions was a little bit directed towards those 81 positions because the RCMP is mandated that they have to fill new created positions within 12 months. So for example, now we're asking for 17 positions. They must be filled in 12 months. So we took not necessarily a back seat, but maybe we were sitting in the middle and not in the driver's seat for that year and a half. So it did slow down the amount of those ODS positions, those surplus positions that we have available to backfill the people that are off on sickness or MATPAT or whatever.
Okay, good. And thank you for that, because that was one of my questions. So I'm glad that you did answer that. Maybe, Chuck, I know you discussed it a little bit more in your presentation, the division admin portion, and Councillor Butler just talked about it. Can I get a little bit more explanation on that? Exactly how much dollars the budget is allocating per member to send to J Division? And I'm assuming division admin means J Division in Fredericton, okay, who do a great job, and there's no question about it. But how much per member is the city of Moncton actually spending or sending to Fredericton per member to go into this fund?
So the fund right now, every year, they give us a number that they think it's going to be. It's always been problematic for us. I guess it's about 55. That's the number they gave us.
$55 per,
55 grand per member for 2020.
55,000 per year?
Yes,
Okay,
right? So that's what goes into the fund. That's usually one that will contribute to the surplus or the deficit because it moves all through the year, depending how many people are off and that kind of thing. For us, that in the middle of the year, we have no control over that number. It's kind of a number that's given to us, and that will incur either surplus or deficit. We'd much prefer if we could actually just, I guess, tally up at the end and put that in the next year budget. Then our budget would be much more stable all the way going through. But we've been asking for 8 years, and we haven't budged that one yet.
so this increase to J Division, which was 4.76%, that's just a ballpark number? Or is that something you're forecasting in your budget?
That's the number that they gave, that National gave us. That's what the number is going to be.
Okay, so that's the number from National.
Yeah, so we'll see if it's going to hold through. I guess for the last 10 years, it's probably, they've been off every single year, sometimes lower, most of the time a little bit higher. So so it does go both ways, but it's not the easiest thing to deal with, I guess. Or finance people don't like that number.
Okay, good. Thanks for asking that, because I know it was probably a difficult question. In your slides, you also talk about the salary increase, which was 2.31%, a little bit over $1 million. And you used the word RM, which I'm assuming is regular members. Okay, that's great. So this is going out through the entire force. Is that correct? Okay, so this comes from where, this increase in salary?
This is what's projected in the negotiations, I guess, right now. That's what they project. Again, it's the number they ask us to put in the budget. It's the same thing for the Moncton. I guess we have got a number that we put in there, but it may or may not turn out to be that number.
Does this have anything to do with the increase in salaries that were negotiated when the policing union took fold across the country and had an ability to negotiate? So this would be connected to their negotiations that they've done
Correct.
on your behalf, and then they come back to you to present it, to say you need to support this. Would that be, is that how that all works? Because I'm trying to figure out how the union, so the union goes out, negotiates, says that they want a salary increase, and then they turn around and this is part of that salary increase that they requested.
Yes, it's like that. And then like year to year, Debbie, who preps our budget, has to set aside an amount where we think it's going to go, because it was 4 or 5 years ago when the CBA came, collective bargaining agreement came in with the National Police Federation, and then there was those large increases at that time with those large salary increases. But now the RCMP has that association, so every year or two, there's new discussions and negotiations with Treasury Board. So we always have to assume and prepare for a potential surplus. So that we know what the amount is, because it was just decided this summer. So that's why it's included in the budget.
Okay, good, thank you. And I think, Superintendent, to your point, you talked about how much controversy or uncertainty there was on bringing new members here while councils discuss the RCMP role in Moncton. I just want to go on the record and say our members do a great job, but city council's role, I guess, council's roles are to be accountable, you know, to the general public that elect us. So we're just doing our job based on the information we're given. And I'm always a guy that likes to go fact versus opinion. So fact checking and proving all that, which is in your KPIs, which will help increase the police presence in Moncton, and crime levels will eventually go down. The question is, what's the right staffing number? To your point, because we've been kind of staying at the same number for years and years and years, and Moncton's growth has grown. I mean, everybody that comes to this mic, everybody around this table says that Moncton is one of the fastest growing municipality across the country, and we haven't increased our members, you know, so, and with that comes crime, with that comes traffic. And we're going to talk about that, Superintendent, you and I here just for a second. The red light cameras, you did talk about it. I like to call them traffic control red light cameras because there is a lot more than just red light options on them. They catch speeding. They can be used in amber alerts. They can be used in stolen cars, theft in the areas, and things along that line. So I think we've got to come up with a broader than just red light camera. But with the new election that just recently closed here in New Brunswick a week ago, it's going to be very interesting to see who they put in charge of public safety. Because you know that you and I have had this conversation on red light cameras in the past. This is something that we, you know, I started working on with city staff back in 2017, and now the legislation is in place. The only drawback is if the city of Moncton was to move forward, or any municipality was to move forward to help you and to help keep the community safe, any money that comes in goes to J Division, or goes to, a portion goes to, you know, in fines, doesn't come right back to the community. How much of a fine, and you mentioned 300 to 500 tickets a month, how much of a fine comes back to Moncton City, or City of Moncton, out of that ticket?
Wouldn't be able to tell you.
No, just
Yeah, maybe Chuck has the answer.
There's
Oh.
nothing.
nothing
There
comes
is
back.
nothing. It all goes to the province. mostly.
So, okay, so my statement's right.
Yeah.
All goes to the province. So even,
Not J Division, but goes to the province.
okay, so even if we did miraculously overnight put in red light cameras across the city to catch violations, fines that are issued, all the funding that comes in automatically goes to the province of New Brunswick.
Yeah, Chuck might add, but just
Yep.
before Chuck adds that, so I've been in the province here policing for 22 years, and it used to be the inverse. It was very important. You had to put the code of the municipality on each ticket because there was different funding models. That's something perhaps the city of Moncton wants to discuss with the province. However, 100% goes there. But again, and I'm all for technology too, and then we'll have to wait and see what exactly the province rolls out, what's the city is gonna roll out, train people and get it going, because as a critical incident commander myself, we could use that to advise motorists when we have a critical incident. Social media, you get the alert ready message on your phone, and as you're driving on Main Street, you see go home because there's a dangerous offender in the community. So we're all about technology, and we're looking forward to see it. But Chuck just had something else to add about that.
Sure, great, thank you.
The one, I guess, missing piece of that new, the potential, I guess, to use that type of technology is the funding agreement. That hasn't been resolved, and that is the only thing that's going to prevent that from going forward one way or the other. You have to decide where the money, and if the municipalities are going to provide funding, I guess, and buy this machinery, obviously they'll need to get their return on investment. So that needs to be determined before, but that would impact the traffic situation in Moncton. It's a significant change, but it's still not ready for us to use it because there's no funding agreement.
That's right. And that's the hardest part, is getting a funding agreement with the province of New Brunswick to get them to give up funding to support such a project, right? So I think we're going to see that maybe when we move forward with the new government, but we'll have to wait and see. Chuck, since you're at the mic, I've only got two more questions. In one of your slides, you talked about violations, and then you said comparisons. As you went through it, there seems to be a lot of chatter on Facebook. It seems like when somebody goes by on a bike in a neighborhood, it gets posted on social media that this guy's or woman is, you know, creeping areas, looking to do break-ins, so on and so forth. How much of that are you watching on social media that's actually being part of your violations or comparisons?
So.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So zero, there's zero social media stuff that would be in these data and calls for service. Our analysts do review social media, open source stuff to give us like intel reports and that kind of things. But there's nobody watching social media to see that Sean Crossman on such and such street noticed Danielle Bourgeois who looks out of place. There's no big brother watching social media, but we still use it obviously for our investigations. So, and that's why we need people to call us, because sometimes if somebody knows what's going on and they can give a descriptor, then our investigators can go out, get a camera. Oh, we see that it's Joe Blow, and hey, we can link him to 3 other crimes, and then bust open a storage container and there's 12 stolen bicycles. So that's why we need people to call us instead of posting stuff on social media. People want to get involved. I get it, but you can advise your neighbors of what's going on in the community. Like in my neighborhood, there's a neighborhood watch on Facebook too. My wife tells me all the time and says, hey, the neighbor down the road saw a coyote or whatever, or there was a car parked on the end of the road. People still need to call us too, because there's nobody watching that 24/7.
And I think that's going to be one of your hardest challenges, I guess, moving forward, because that affects perception. And I think that's one of the key words that you're going to be focusing on in the next couple of years will be perception, right? How is this going to help lower the well, I don't want to say lower perception, but almost work towards eliminating the public's perception of what's going on in the community. And this is out of everybody's control,
I think-
Facebook or Twitter or whatever you want to talk about.
And I think so. Some of the positive things in our communication plan is actually being really out there. Like we've done a little bit better with councils and with the CRPA and showing what we're doing, but even all kinds of innovative ideas of regular postings to the community, because we always say fatal collision, bank robbery, big incident, drug bust, but like actually having somebody out, it's like, hey, we were investigating a series of break and enters on First Avenue in Moncton here today, and we talked to local residents and put a mic up to somebody's mouth. And these are the types of things that we're talking about. And even like in the community consultations, doing those proactive ones and saying the residents are like, wow, the members of the RCMP, they're coming to my neighborhood in 3 months, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to show up with my concerns and listen to what they have to say and drill down to what's happening in that neighborhood instead of waiting for an issue.
Great. And my last question's on this report. I don't know if Superintendent, you've gone over it, the Joint Task Force report, the Joint Action Report on Homelessness. Have you seen, you've gone through that?
Yeah, in the past, yes.
Yeah. Do we know where that sits right now with the RCMP? Because according to that, point number 22, and I'm curious to know where this report is, because it seems like it's gathering dust. Point number 22 was Kodiak RCMP will provide additional resources, bracket, social workers, to the mental health crisis unit. Has that happened? And can I check that off as being done in this report?
Interesting. That's an old report, I guess. So I think that's been shelved, I think, I think anyway, but most of the actions that the RCMP had, we had completed, except that one. That one we tried to work out with the province, I guess, to get social workers, but there was a barrier, and the barrier was the transfer of information. The information we had, we couldn't share with them, and the information that they had, medications that they were on, that they seen their doctor, that kind of stuff, they couldn't share with us. So we had intended to actually provide funding so that they could hire social workers to work on that team. And that fell through with the province. We were not able to reach an agreement, I guess, on that. Subsequent to that, I guess, and to your point, Councillor Bourgeois, we tried to hire ourselves, I guess, social workers. We just, again, have an offer out for one right now, part of our community policing team. We're hopeful if we do hire this individual who's contemplating coming or not, would be the first one in a series. The first one, every single one has fallen through. There aren't that many, I guess, that want to do the work, that are available at the salary, all that kind of stuff. We're hopeful. I'd say it's about 50-50. We should know actually by the time we get out of here if that person's going to join us or not. So it's not for lack of trying that we've tried those things. We just could never get there. We've struck out with the province, I guess, in doing that. And we struck out ourselves, I guess, trying to bring them in. I think we've probably interviewed and offered positions at least 5 or 6 and have been not successful, I guess, in able to do that.
Okay, and Chuck, and thank you for that, and I appreciate that, and that's information, that's valuable information for us to know. Point 6 was Kodiak RCMP will provide all specialized units connection with a homeless under a dedicated inspector. That's happened as well? So we have, okay, perfect. So maybe if you don't mind, if you could look at those points and provide them back to me, I would appreciate it. Because half of this report's not even done. Like, I mean, it's just, it's sitting on a shelf somewhere that we need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's disappointing that I have to bring it to light today that maybe we can push this more. But I'm glad to hear the RCMP has almost covered everything but one. So that's really good to hear. And my last question, and I know that I said that was my last question, but Superintendent, you're looking at all these officers, where are they going to come from? You had talked about possibly sending out a national call for officers to, Moncton, the bilingual city. How many do you actually think we're going to get in a year? I know that's a magic number. It's like winning the 649, or my case, I've got 2 officers who live 6 doors down from me, which is great. But what are the odds? What are the numbers? Is it a true number?
Yeah, so so J Division RCMP is mandated to staff them in 12 months, those 17 new positions.
Okay, good.
And I and Sylvette and John can attest, I'm very annoying with our staffing personnel in Fredericton, because I told them, look, we have vacancies right now, and when this is supported, we have to be at 0 because now we have 17 to fill. So
Good.
we're already working on it.
Good, thank you.
Good. Deputy Mayor Terrio.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
Merci, Madame la Maire.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for this excellent presentation. There are a lot of improvements and a lot of new information, so thank you for that. I have only one question, and it goes along what my colleague, Councillor Bourgeois, asked. And the last but one question from my other colleague. So maybe for you, Charles, you may want to answer that question. In the Perryville-Taylor report, recommendation 5 highlights the efforts that need to be deployed to address social issues. So what have you done? And I know you've mentioned to Councillor Crossman that you've done, that you've started discussions. But I'm thinking about the University of Moncton that presented its report on the public perception of policing services. They have social workers present, they have a whole team. So what are you planning for the future in that respect to identify solutions and create partnerships?
Des projets qu'on avait cette année, c'était.
So one of the projects we had this year was to work with the YMCA. Like Councillor Bourgeois said, they're not police officers. It's more about providing training to deal with homelessness and homeless people. So the project will be expanded next year. We have the 211 system, so they are unable to take our calls and to forward them to social workers, people who work in that field specifically. So because of that gap, we need to find another solution. So that's what we're going to do next year until the provincial government gives us the financial resources to make sure the 211 project works as planned. So that's one of the projects that we're planning for next year, but we need more funding to address the 211 gap. So still striving to have social workers in our community policing unit. This proves quite difficult to achieve. I'm going to ask my question in English.
With others and to create a business plan for this particular issue. So creating partnerships, trying to find solutions to our social issues. So how does the RCMP work with our community partners? I mean, we need a plan, just like everything else that you do.
And I'll answer back in français or in English. I'll answer in English.
Allez-y.
Councillor
I'll
Thériault.
go ahead.
This conversation for the last 5 years since I've been here. It's a perpetual, unfortunate game of ping pong right now. It's who's gonna do this? Who's gonna work at social issues and the people that are living rough in the community? But it's not just that; it's everything else regarding that addictions, mental health. We're meeting with our people every day, every week, and discussing what can we do better. But we're just a tiny little part of that solution. And again, like we've been trying to hire social workers for years, but right now there is no infrastructure, there's no people, so we get that call. We're constantly getting that call. But yes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that. However, we're talking about health.
C'est très bien. I'm sure that we could sit down with le président of l'Université de Moncton and
With the dean of the University of Moncton.
is it us as a city? Who do we direct this to? Do we create do we coordinate this with the RCMP and l'université or someone? But I think there are solutions possible. It's just that we need to find a way to get it done.
I think there's a great opportunity with a new provincial government in place to bring all of the members together to renew the discussion and see how we can break down some of the barriers to fix these very complex social challenges.
That is very good. So very soon, I hope. Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Nous serons là.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll be there.
We're over now. Sorry, go ahead. Councillor Kingston, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Addis, and on the CRPA committee for, I think, 6 months. Thank you, Ben, for your presentation, Chuck, and Don for coming. I can swing back maybe to the 10 GIS candidates in 2025, Ben, for everybody's clear and on the same page, and obviously those watching. It's under uniform members. They are not all, in fact, uniform, but plain clothes doing investigative work and other sections that you're lacking in, correct? It's just to make that very clear.
Yeah, and we just, like I said earlier, we just use the GIS name, but it's our investigational services. It's everyone that's investigating all criminal type offenses. And we've already started talking about how we're going to do that. Obviously, there's going to be people more specialized when we talk about child sexual assaults, internet child exploitation. We have to work with our partners and attempt homicide, but the day-to-day stuff, focus just on investigations instead of a general duty member who at 9 a.m. is writing a collision report, at 10 a.m. is doing a school patrol, at 11 a.m. is doing traffic enforcement, at noon is conducting an arrest on a violent offense, and all afternoon writing a court document. Actually have people, that's all they do is doing investigations.
Thank you, Ben. Well, it's going to encourage and has encouraged a lot of great discussions between the councils of Moncton, Dieppe, and Riverview, and a lot of great input today from my fellow councillors. Even if I wasn't on the CRPA committee, really, our population and crime indexes, I think, they demand that we, councils, cities, towns, we examine. That's what we're doing now in 2024, heading into that 3-year plan. If Kodiak Regional RCMP is the present manpower to efficiently carry out its duties and public safety concerns. And you mentioned, and I'll quote Councillor Butler as well, former member, that hanging by a thread. And I think when you look at the data, we have no choice but to proceed. How we get there and what levels do we get there and what totals do we get there is entirely up to the 3 councils. But We know what the asks are. City of Moncton at 71%, that's 9 million, give or take. Dieppe 2.5 at 19%. Riverview 1.5 million at 10.70%. Great discussions are coming with the three councils, but undeniably, our population growth and our crime numbers, crime index numbers require that we do something regarding the overall staffing numbers. That's where we're going with these great conversations, and I look forward to many more coming up in the weeks to come. Thank you, Madam Adams. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? I saw a light on. It's no longer on. Nobody? Councillor Bourgeois, yes. I'd ask you to be brief though, because we're well over on this item.
Je veux l'être, sauf que c'est le plus gros, le plus important.
Yes, I will be, but this is the largest, most important service that we offer, so it would be nice to be able to have a wholesome discussion on it. I have two suggestions, and I don't know if this can be done before the budget, but I'll ask the same questions when we hear the same presentation at budget time. But I'm just wondering, and I'm asking the CAO, if we could do something quick and dirty to find out what Peace River and Surrey and other municipalities are doing, rather than hiring additional police officers. They're hiring social workers, psychologists, and they have peace officers. So I'd really like to know what these municipalities are doing, because 17 members at $150,000 each per year compared to 17 social workers at half of that price would make a major difference to the budget approval that will be upcoming. That's my first suggestion. My second is when the Minister of Public Safety will be appointed, we should put all of our letters in a file, all of these letters that we've sent to the province, because Councillor Crossman mentioned it. It's lasted for years. In another 2 years, we're going to be hiring another 10 or 12 members for traffic enforcement. We'll give fines, but the money from the fines goes to the province, whereas the citizens of Moncton are paying for it. So it's a ridiculous formula, and that has to be corrected. But all of the other issues as well, the designation of our community officers as peace officers, it depends on the province. All of those things have to be worked out. And perhaps the new government with its new vision will be able to help us. But perhaps we should send a letter to the new Minister of Public Safety to include all of these themes and be very clear in what we need.
The new ministers will be named on Saturday, and the work is being done right now to put all those letters together to. Excellent. So thank you everyone for the discussion on this. As was mentioned, we will be discussing this during budget deliberations. One request I do have is that I'd like to see what the projections are. Chuck, you mentioned a couple of times, this is just for this year, and this is much smaller than what it will be. I think it's going to be really important that we know what the impacts are for year 2, year 3, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we should have that in the next week and a half, I would say.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the board members for your ongoing service, and lots more discussions to come, I'm sure.
Thank you very much.
Your worship, our next item is item 5.2, bylaw enforcement policy. And we have Conrad Landry, our fire chief, Bill Budd, director of planning and development, and France Levesque Ouellette, Director of Legal Services, here to talk to this file.
Welcome.
Thank you. There was a PowerPoint. I'm not sure if it's, oh, there it goes. Okay. Good afternoon, bon après-midi, Your Worship and Member of Council. This afternoon, we're sharing with you folks the bylaw policy to help assist us in delivering our services and to put more clarity on everybody's end. So the purpose to articulate the general bylaw enforcement process of the city of including priority setting, and that's a challenge we're facing is to how to prioritize our calls or our requests for service. and describes some of the key elements of the city's enforcement process meant to ensure the fair and efficient treatment of bylaw enforcement. So again, we want to make sure that it's fair, equitable to everybody that requires our services. The goals, of course, is to maintain a safe and viable community. That's our main objective. The city does not have the resources to proactive monitor all areas of the city. So we have 4 community officers in the field and 3 bylaw officers that are Monday to Friday. We can't be in every corner at all times. Public property violations are generally enforced proactively, while private property violators are response to complaints. So basically, we can monitor, patrol our parks, our streets, our sidewalks, et cetera, our trails. And then when it comes to private property, of course, we require a request for service. The city promotes an enforcement philosophy that seeks voluntary compliance. So that's a general idea. So whenever we go, we get a complaint, we always try to ask them to comply. We try to educate. Giving a fine or an order is always the last resort. So we try to get compliance, voluntary compliance before anything else. Issuance of a penalty is generally to be used only where cooperation and removal of the violation cannot reasonably be achieved. So as I was saying, that's our last resort. Education is generally the first step, and bylaw offenders are usually provided time to remove the violation. More direct enforcement approach may occur in situations such as, so whenever we have a compliance, we're going to look at it. So let's say it's to fix, I don't know, a fence. We're going to give them appropriate time, considering how hard it is to get contractors, et cetera. They might get a month to fix the fence unless it's an immediate safety issues. So there's some cases that we may not be able to give some time. So examples of that, the violation occurs on public property. So sometimes if it's on a public property, we don't have time because of safety issues to give him time. Number 2, there exists a safety or security risk, or that is the risk to the environment or human health. So if there's any safety concerns, that's an example, could be overgrown trees on a sidewalk or on a street that could become a safety issue. Enforcement follows a widespread public education campaign. So in the next, unfortunately, in the next few months, we're going to start doing a campaign for winter parking. So we're going to put pamphlets on people's windshield. We're going to do some social media. So if it's widely spread, a known fact that you're not supposed to park on the streets when we give the Moncton alert, then we might not give a warning or time to fix that. Of course, the next one, if council has prioritized direct enforcement to address a specific issue, so if we get direction from council, so we might not give that prolonged notice. The next one, where the bylaw offender knows or reasonably so, if ever according to the bylaw officer, it is generally understood that 99% of the population knows that this is an offense, we might not give him time. One of the biggest thing for this policy is the 3 priorities that we set out. So to help us, again, to prioritize our work every day. So the first one, priority number 1, would be safety. The alleged bylaw violation may adversely impact the environment or public safety. These violations will be investigated and enforced as soon as possible. Prior warnings or education to enforce offenders may not be appropriate or practical. So it may be or may not. And those could be kind of a minimum standard. If a building is about to collapse, that would be a priority, for example. Fire pit would be another example that potentially could be, or dog bite or dog on the loose. So those are just examples. Priority number 2, significant negative impact to adjacent properties. Generally, enforcement efforts are directed at seeking voluntary compliance. So if we do have those significant, we're going to try to educate and encourage them to be compliant. So this could be a dog barking, for example, or noise complaint. So some debris on the streets or on the sidewalk. Those are types of that. Some might be in any category, like tall grass is really an interesting one because it could be an immediate safety issue, it could be a nuisance, or it could be just kind of aesthetics. The last priority, priority number 3 would be general nuisance. The alleged bylaw violation may be a matter that is a general concern to residents. These violations tend to be mostly cosmetic. Bylaw enforcement officers will focus on education and will provide opportunities to bring the property or situation into compliance. So again, this could be unsightly or tall grass or debris. It really depends on the situation and the gravity of it. This slide is very important for everybody to understand, is the complaints may be received in person at the Moncton City Hall, by phone using the 506-853-3333, via email to info@moncton.ca, or online at moncton.ca. And the reason it's important because this is monitored 24/7, 365 days a year. So by sending an email or calling directly the bylaw office or one of the employees, if we're on meetings or we're on vacation, we might not get to it. But these numbers, these emails, these portals, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the community officers get this information 24/7. So that's by far your quickest way to get service, is by using any of these methods. Next point, while all complaints will be received and logged, not all complaints will be investigated. So we will look at every complaint. So there's no doubt about it. But there's sometimes that it might be two neighbors that are not getting along. So we might refer them to settle those outside of the bylaw. Sometimes it's not a bylaw violation. The next one, anonymous complaints will not be acted upon unless the alleged violation falls within the scope of the priority number 1 or something the city otherwise proactively enforce, like parking, signs, or public. So some people call us and just leave a message or sends, I guess, an email. We would have their email. But it's hard for us in case we need more information. We don't have any contact. We don't know who to call back. So if we're lacking information, it's hard for us to get a hold of them. So we really encourage people to leave at least a phone number so we can contact them if we need additional help. Frivolous or vexatious complaints will not be acted on. So if we know that people are just doing it because it's not for the right reasons, or they're constantly bombarding us for stuff that we've already addressed, we will not address those. Upon receipt of valid complaints, officers will investigate in accordance with the priorities. So we would like to classify these according to the priorities we just went. Still in the complaints, should a violation be confirmed, administration will exercise discretion to determine whether further enforcement is required. So again, if we see that there's progress, we might give them an extension, or if we see that a fine or an order won't help, we can work with them. So we will investigate case by case. Administration will not proactively provide follow-up information to complaints other than what's automatically generated when the complaints provide in their emails. So we did fix, there was a lot of bugs in our system. So now they're getting a little bit more information when they get those automatic complaints. And it's not as more generic. We kind of focused it. We still found a few more bugs that we're fixing. The other thing is, as of Monday, we do have an admin report that we're sharing with finance that's going to proactively call complainants. So we found that was one part missing. So starting Monday, well, she's going to need training, but we're going to start being proactive and calling back our complainants. So the last slide, it is recommended elected officials not become personally involved in specific active bylaw enforcement files and matters where an elected official is contacted with respect to a complaint or is contacted with respect to an active bylaw enforcement file and matter. The elected official should be advised complaints to contact administrative directly. So again, you folks are getting a lot of calls. Encourage as much as possible to use the contact numbers, the emails, the portal. You'll get a lot better service. If there's a complaint about our service, by all means, we'll take those calls, but try to encourage as much as possible to go through the proper channels so we'll get better service. And then all those calls are logged. That was try to catch up a little bit of time, but thank you.
Terrific. No, thank you very much, Chief. Councillor Bourgeois, I have you up first. Do you wish to move this recommendation?
No, shouldn't kiss to.
Esquidiet, Moved by Councillor Crossman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Terrio. Back to you, Councillor Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. I have a number of questions about the details. And I thought we were going to be approving it in principle today and then ratified in public later. So I don't know if I should ask my questions now or later, but my main question,
De la ville.
a city policy, I don't understand why under general, the second bubble, it says,
Every bylaw violation that may occur within its jurisdiction. Et je me dis, ça fait pas de sens.
I just think that just doesn't make sense. Is it because we have bylaws? Do we have too many bylaws? Do we have bylaws that are too specific? If we have bylaws, well, we have to implement them. We have to make sure there's compliance. Otherwise, get rid of them. I mean, that logic, I just don't understand the logic there. Could you explain that? Why in the policy it says that in the bylaws that are higher up than the policies, it says in the bylaws, you shouldn't do this, or you must do this, or you shouldn't do that. But then in a policy, it says, oh, well, oh, it's not serious because we're not really going to, we don't have the resources necessary to ensure compliance. Or is that, am I misunderstanding here? Well, I think number 2 says suivre. Are you talking about paragraph 2? Proactively monitor. We can't be proactively monitoring continually. If we get complaints, of course we will. We will enforce all of our bylaws, but it's impossible for us to proactively monitor the whole city under each bylaw. That's not what it means. No, I was on number 2. The next one, it says,
Every bylaw violation that may occur within its jurisdiction. C'est celle-là pour moi qui fait pas de sens. La première,
so that's the one that doesn't make sense for me. The first one I understand, but the second one, I just don't understand the logic here. Why the municipal council says we have municipal bylaws. It's taken us years to get that far, and we review them occasionally because they're important. And on the Local Governance Act, it's in our power. We have the power to legislate in matters of XYZ, traffic, grass, the height of the grass, and so on. But on the other hand, we're going to adopt a policy that says, nah, it's not serious. No, it's not. No, don't worry, because we don't have the resources. So we're not going to investigate everything because we don't have the necessary resources. So I'm not blaming you here, but logically, I can't approve a policy that says, well, perhaps I could ask legal affairs to comment on this, but I think the intention was that we can't be everywhere all the time. There might be some violations that we might not be aware of. Well, not be aware of, okay, well, that's obvious, but when you are aware,
enforce.
further, the city does not have the resources to enforce every bylaw. So what do we do with that? Well, that was there because in the reality, it's the case, like Conrad mentioned, we don't necessarily have the resources to look at every corner of the city to make sure that there are no bylaws that are being violated. But if it's a council policy at the end of the day, so it's something that you don't want to see in the policy. It's up to council to determine. But the intention was to put an expectation in there, so that.
Enforce bylaws, so.
Oui.
Yeah.
Puis je comprends ça.
Well, yeah, I understand the issue of the expectations. It's the expectation, but I understand that. But if we identify a problem of resources, well, then can we put in the resources? That would be logical. But it's not logical to have us a statement in the policy that says, okay, you have all of these bylaws that come under the Local Governance Act to ensure a peace and order and a good governance. But then there's a policy that says, oh, don't worry about it. We're not going to implement them anyhow. I can't go to the public and justify that. But that statement, that declaration, okay, well, the intention was not to say the city is going to ignore or not enforce the bylaws. That's not the intention. But if council is not comfortable with that statement, I think we can remove it. It's not the statement before that says we don't have the resources to ensure full-time monitoring throughout the whole city. No, I have no problems with the rest of the paragraph, but it gives us an escape clause. It's if the citizens then say, oh, well, they're complaining because we're not implementing these policies, we should add policy resources. Well, I think a common person will understand that we can't do everything all the time, but to actually write that in a policy, I don't know. I can't defend that. So if that's what if we need that amendment, if we need to remove that statement, I think I'm ready to move it. And then I can send you my other policies that it would be tweaking the policy before we adopt it, and you can do what you want with it. But if I'm not happy, well, then I would propose other amendments when you present the policy for approval in public. But I don't know what the rest of council thinks, but I find it ridiculous that we're talking out of both sides of our mouth at the same time. That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Is there anyone else who has any questions? Oh, Deputy Mayor Theriault, go ahead.
Merci, Madame la maire. En fait, I totally agree. Je suis tout à fait d'accord avec le conseiller Bourgeois.
I totally agree with Councillor Bourgeois.
The work that we do, we need to make sure that, how do we do that? Do we remove? That's.
I would ask our solicitor to speak to that. I'm sure there's a way. Oh, I did the same thing. Sorry, 1 second. There, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think there's any issue unless
No.
council has an issue. There's no issue with removing that particular sentence. I think I think the policy still applies the same, and then we can just bring it forward to the public session with that sentence removed, and hopefully that satisfies all of council when you review it for final ratification.
Merci.
D'autres questions?
Any other questions?
Okay, now we're going to ask the mover and the seconder to put their vote. It was Councillor Theriault and Councillor Crossman. Yep.
Yeah, I think Councillor Crossman, you moved it and Deputy Mayor seconded it.
Yes.
So do you see that screen in front of you? Yeah,
Okay, yep.
you've done that?
good.
Okay, good.
Okay. And now we're going to go to the vote. Second, I got to get to the right place. Bear with me.
This will get a lot faster over
Yes, it will.
time.
I promise. Now you can vote. Yes. Okay, I see that everybody's voted. There we go. All in favor.
Motion carries unanimously.
It's me again. Now it's 5.3, and it's a policy and appeal committee of council of the city of Moncton on dangerous and unsightly premises. And we have Tessa Bellavo, our new solicitor, that will be presenting this, along with France Levesque, Ouellette, Director of Legal.
Bon après-midi, Madame la mairesse et membres du
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors.
The Policy on Appeal Committee on Dangerous or Unsightly Premises and Property. I haven't prepared a presentation. I think the proposed changes are very straightforward and simple, and they're documented in the report. I'm happy to review the proposed changes if council would like, or just jump to questions if there are any I'll leave that to your discretion.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. Is there someone who wishes to, am I allowed to say this? Oh, is there someone who wishes to move this motion? Councillor Bourgeois, do you wish to move it?
It's not on the motion, it's afterwards.
Oh, okay, is there someone who wishes to move this? Thank you, Councillor Butler. Is there a seconder? Anyone? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Pardon me? Well, before that, Councillor Bourgeois actually had a, oh, sorry.
Usually do that.
Oh, okay, so can you press the little buttons, everybody? Okay, so moved by Councillor Butler. Can you put your, oh, it's all done. Okay. Okay. And the seconder was actually, it was the Deputy Mayor. Can you second it? There we go. All right. Thank you for that. This will get smoother, I swear.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to redo that, unfortunately.
So we're just going to go back one step here. Yeah, could we get Councillor Butler and the Deputy Mayor to, there, thank you. And now on questions. Go ahead, Councillor Bourgeois.
No, my question, I have no problem with the motion. I have a question following. It's related to, but it's not on the motion.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions on this item? We can go to the vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now, Councillor Bourgeois, go ahead.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci pour la présentation. J'ai une question.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question. Do you speak French? Yes. I understand that this is because of the provincial act that we have to do this, but why do we have an appeal committee for parking violations,
Pour les autres choses.
but not for other things? So is this something that's that just doesn't make sense? Why do we have an appeal committee on things that are so trivial, like parking violations, but we don't have an appeal committee on tall grass, or perhaps there is one, but is there an appeal committee for each of the bylaws of the city? No, and thank you for the question, Councillor. The policy is on dangerous or unsightly premises. The appeal committee only addresses violations of the bylaw on dangerous and unsightly premises, and it comes under the local governance. It's sections 128 to 144, I think. And it's really just directly related to dangerous or unsightly premises and properties. As far as I know, there's no appeal committee for other bylaw violations. It's really specifically for that. That's the only thing that this appeal committee looks at. It's not, there's no parking violations. No, I'm sorry, Mike, I misstated my question. But we have this appeal committee and an appeal process on something that is so trivial, whereas something like parking violations or speeding or whatever it is, they don't. I mean, why do we have an appeal committee on this to address these issues and nothing else? When there is a violation of the bylaw on dangerous and unsightly premises and property, quite often it's in relation to the building and the structure of the building, a vacant building quite often. And so it comes under the municipal authority, and the municipality has the power to demolish it altogether. So it's a discretionary power, but that's why there's an appeal committee, as far as I know. It's not something that is trivial. It's not taken lightly. It's really just to address that kind of issue. Okay, yeah, you're talking about demolishing a building. Okay, I understand. Okay, thank you, your worship. Thank you. On passe alors. Ensuite, c'est
Paul Edgar is here to discuss this along with Chandra Dempsey and Joanne Duguay. And council, please note there are 6 different votes and recommendations on this, so it may take a little bit.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. The staff named Bank Technical Group, we'll call it working group, it's just easier, is here today to present you the proposed names that have been vetted by our working group and MB 911. As well, the working group is proposing to change 3 street names, name an existing trail and an access road. The first item up is the street name bank additions. It is important to the City of Moncton to support and celebrate the 2 official languages, linguistic communities, promote a value and source of pride that they represent through their unique cultures, and foster a sense of belonging and true equality for all of its citizens. Names selected for its public streets, trails, civic facilities shall reflect and celebrate the historical, cultural, ethnic, and linguistic characteristics of the community. As most street names are required to be picked from the name bank, it's important that new names be added every so often. For this purpose, 36 new names, as can be seen on the screen, have been proposed for inclusion in the name bank. The current name bank consistency is made up of 60% English, 31% French, 8% other, and 2% bilingual. The working group at this time felt that it was more appropriate to select more French, bilingual, and other street names to be added to the bank. In order to get it closer to the 45% required for the English and the French, and then the 10% required for the bilingual and other. Of the 36 names proposed, as you can see on the screen, 4 are English, 25 are French, 1 is other, and 6 are bilingual. This will bring our acceptance of these proposed names would bring the name bank ratios closer to 54.7, 34.7, 7.1, and 3.5% respectively. Item 2 is the proposed street name change of Ryan Street. This map shows the location of Ryan Street in Ward 3, just off of Mountain Road. It is located between Canadian Tire and Battery House, and that is the portion that we're proposing this street name, as shown in red. With Ryan Street occurring on both sides of Wheeler Boulevard, confusion can occur for emergency response and navigation services. Renaming this portion of Ryan Street presents an opportunity to enhance public safety and improve navigational clarity. This change will be beneficial for the community and encourage swift emergency response in critical situations. The working group is putting forward 3 names to council to select from. Pâtisseur, which is French and is a name to celebrate Acadians that have and continue to help establish the importance of their culture here in Moncton. Bow is English and is reference to the violin, which is a prominent instrument in New Brunswick. Agnew is English. Earl Agnew served in the Army during World War II, and his family has served the fire department through several generations. Item 3 is Harper Street. It's similar to the Ryan Street issue. It is located in Ward 1 off of Main Street. Harper Street and Harper's Lane presently are similar sounding, and it's one of the things we're trying to eliminate within the city. Harper Street presently has no buildings or address associated with it. However, with the proposed icon development to the east side of Harper Street, it will see approximately 285 new units with a Harper Street address. A new unique name in place of Harper Street would enhance the effectiveness of 911 services, ensuring that responders can quickly and accurately locate individuals in need. This is crucial in emergency situations where every second counts. The working group is putting forward 3 names for council to select from. Bateau Street is French, and it celebrates the shipbuilding industry along the Petite-Kodiak River. DaCosta Street is French. A bit of background on this one. In 1606, Matthew DaCosta was a Mi'kmaq language interpreter and the first known Black man to travel with Samuel de Champlain during his exploration. This dates back to the very beginning of the Brunswick settlement in the early 17th century. The third item is Saxby Street, which is English, after Stephen Martin Saxby. He was a naval instructor and amateur astronomer who, based on his astronomical studies, had predicted the extremely high tides in the North Atlantic Ocean on October 1st, 1869. This is also known as the Saxby Gale. The fourth item is a proposed street name change of Glendalee Crescent. Glendalee Crescent is located in Ward 1 within the Valhalla subdivision. The crescent connects Frampton Lane and Meadowdale Drive, which further connects to Mountain Road.
Glendale Crescent is located in Ward 2 in the Centennial Place subdivision. This crescent connects to Parkway Drive, which further connects Centennial Drive and then to George Boulevard. Confusion of late has arisen between the street names Glendale Crescent and Glendale Crescent, particularly within the Centennial Park Place subdivision. The working group have received complaints from residents of Glendale Crescent about misdirected packages and 911 calls mistakenly reaching their addresses instead of Glendale and vice versa. Upon researching the two streets, it was discovered that Glendale Crescent was registered on January 14, 1974. A few weeks later, Glendale Crescent was registered on February 1st of 1974. While both streets were developed around the same time, the similarity of their names has led to confusion with emergency responders and delivery services. Currently, Glendale Crescent has 14 residents, while Glendale Crescent only has 19. In consideration of the smaller number of residents affected by the potential name change, it is proposed to rename Glendale Crescent. This change would significantly enhance the effectiveness of 911 services. At this time, the working group is looking for council support in renaming Glendale Crescent so the process with those residents may start. To expedite the process, we are asking council to assent to the name chosen by majority of Moncton residents and to forego the option of allowing residents to suggest the name of their choosing, as it is felt that this would slow the process down and create more issues with emergency services. This process will involve contacting each resident to explain that what is happening and conducting a poll to allow them to select from one of the proposed names listed here. Mantrac is a French name. It's a name that celebrates the work of Gerald Leblanc of Moncton Mantra Book and published in 1997. Marvin is English, and J.A. Marvin started the Marvin's Biscuit Factory in 1907 on the corner of Main and Pleasant Streets. The company continued its operation until 1978. Terre Rouge is French, and it was an early Acadian name for Moncton. Once a name has been selected, the residents will be notified of the new name so they may change their mailing addresses. Item 5 is a proposed naming of an existing trail located in Ward 1 between McAleese Lane and Blakeney Street. In line with requests from the Parks Department and considering the musical theme associated with the adjacent Sistema program housed in the old École Saint Champlain building, we have developed a list of proposed names that reflect this unique cultural connection. The working group is putting forward 3 names for council to select from. Symphony is French and is a musical ensemble or a composition. Moncton has a number of resident members of and regularly receives performances from Symphony Brunswick. Orchestra is French and is a large musical ensemble. Moncton has orchestras such as the Moncton Symphony Orchestra. Jazz is bilingual, and Moncton has a vibrant jazz scene with groups such as Moncton Mingus Band, Les Piens, and several others. The final item, item 6, is a proposed naming of an existing unnamed access road off of Russ Howard Drive. At the request of Councillor Butler, it is proposed to name the access road to Riel Cormier Drive. This would be in honor of the late Moncton-born Riel Cormier, his outstanding achievements in baseball, and his important contribution to Moncton. So the staff name bank technical group recommend that City Council assent to adding the following proposed names to the name bank. Since there are quite a few names here in this resolution, these names are not and are contained within your package. We'll not read each of them. Further recommendations, the assent to changing Ryan Street to Bâtisseur Street, assent to changing Harper Street to Bateau, assent to starting the process for renaming the Glendale Crescent is further described in the recommendations of the council package, assent to naming the trail located between McAleese Lane and Blakeney Street to Symphony Trail, and assent to naming the access road located off Russ Howard Drive to Riel Cormier Drive. Thank you. Any questions?
All right, so this should be a really interesting exercise. We're going to vote 6 separate times. What did you say, Greg? Yeah, it's a good practice. So they're somewhat different.
You want to vote on all of them? Is everybody okay with?
Well,
voting?
if everyone's
Yeah,
okay with
we
all
do
of these,
have
as
that
a,
option.
okay. Okay, well, okay, why don't we bring up any minor issues that would preclude us voting once? How about that? Okay. First up, I have Deputy Mayor. Did you have a minor issue that would preclude us from voting altogether? Oh, okay. Okay, that's what I'm asking. So do you have a specific question on one of these 6 things?
Not on those 6, no.
Oh, not on those 6. Okay. Councillor Bourgeois, do you?
I'll second it, but on condition that we have just in English, Bâtisseur Street, Harper Street, should we not say to Rue Bâtisseur Street, Rue Harper Street, Sentier Symphony Trail, and Promenade Réal Cormier Drive?
Yeah, yeah.
So with that.
Okay. So, and Deputy Mayor, you wanted to move it
Yes.
as an entity, and it's been, okay, do we have to go back to that other place to do this? Oh, I know, but last time you gave me heck for the mover and seconder thing, so. Okay, okay. Councillor Butler, please speak.
Thank you, Your Worship. I promise not to give heck to anybody. My only one, Paul, would be that the recommendation number 2, it says Moncton City Council will send to changing Ryan Street. I'm not going to try to pronounce that one. But that's really a new street. We haven't used, I realize that map-wise, but if we put this out in the public that we're changing Ryan Street to this, Councillor Steeds and our phones are going to be lit up all day because Ryan Street goes all the way to Earl's Lutz on the other side. Just, I don't know how we could word that to.
Very clearly defining where this street is located would be super important. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be clearly defined when the actual notifications all went out to be noted that it's on
But there's nobody lives there. There's nobody.
No, that was why it was better to change that one, especially from emergency services point of view,
Yeah.
than the other longer portion. We'd have to be clear that it's between the Battery House and Canadian Tire. It's, and it'd be a lot, yeah.
Or it could just be, go ahead, please.
Yeah,
There
new
we go.
street,
Okay,
new street.
go ahead, Nick,
I
sorry.
mean, perhaps we could name that as the portion of Ryan Street east of Wheeler Boulevard.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's east. Okay.
All right then. Oh, okay, you're good then with that? All right. Well, I mean, we're at committee of the whole right now, so I think that Peter is, excuse me, Paul, sorry, Paul.
I just have one more question, Madam Mayor. I don't want to give
Okay.
you a heck or anything, but.
Okay, okay.
The other thing is Paul, when we do this, you're going to contact the family of Réal Cormier
Yeah, we, as you know, we've been
Yeah.
discussing this and there's been a go back and forth between us and they were very, like you had mentioned, that they were quite happy to have this here, so.
Okay.
But we will definitely notify them.
Yeah.
How council wishes to proceed when the sign goes up, whether I'll leave that up to you and how.
Yeah, I think it should be, I think myself personally, there's not a lot of issues here, but I think with this one, it's very important that it's going into all the ball fields where the young people play. And it'll be recognized for many years to come as the Réal Cormier street. Because it does go in, there's a big two big parking lots at the back. So anyway, I just maybe through maybe communications, we could do something. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Crossman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Paul, just one quick, I understand Harper Street and I understand the background as to the name proposed being brought forward. I'm curious as to why Marvin, knowing that the factory is just up the road, as you stated yourself, why that wasn't actually thrown in and another option given for the other street, because I'd really like to honor that heritage property that's not far up the road.
Yeah, I guess it's just what the committee had looked at and they wanted to get some more, I guess, Francophone names in the downtown area.
Okay.
So.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Just putting the,
I agree. I understand that, especially reading through stuff again today. It's like, it could have been used down here for sure as well.
yeah, maybe I know the East End's not growing, there's no future development, but maybe, eventually we do look at some way recognizing that building.
For sure.
Good, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Terrio.
Merci, Madame la Maire. J'ai une question.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question.
I've had a request and I don't know.
For a name change concerning these 6 items
No,
that we
not
have right
these
now?
6. It's a new one.
Oh, anyone can submit them anytime, I think.
If you have a name that you want to submit, definitely submit it to us, and because we are always looking for more names.
Okay.
If there's a name change for a street that you're looking at, get it to us, and we'll start looking at the research for the background as to why it should or shouldn't change. Because there's a lot of times it's MB 911 services that really dictates what changing a name. So.
I've been told that the Cornell Street and Cornhill Street get confused at times, and I would like to recommend that Cornell become Rue Nadeau.
Okay. But you can maybe send an email on that afterwards.
I did fill out the form.
Okay, good. All right, can we just stay on these 6 here? Because this is very exciting that we might possibly move forward on this. With ensuring that when it comes to, for public ratification, that the streets are fully, written out in French and English. And obviously that very precise clarification about what Ryan Street is, I think is going to be very, very important. All right. Oh, Councillor Kingston.
Thank you, Madame Madas. I just wanted to, it's a lot of fun with these namings, and I wanted to support Councillor Crosman on my opinion exactly on Marvin. I thought that's a beautiful building still in use. Paul, the Pleasant Street reference, are you saying in 1907 Pleasant went through the marsh, across Louisville Road directly to where it is now? I'm confused on the Main and Pleasant. I didn't know they intersected, but you maybe correct me on that perhaps. But just to say that I like the Marvin connotation and the fact it was a major employer in the city for many, many, many years.
I may have misspoken, Councillor.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I don't think Main and Pleasant ever connected unless they went through the through Halls
Yeah,
Creek and across the.
I don't think so either.
Thank you. Let's see.
All right. Over to you, Shelley. Oops. So I forget.
The mover was Deputy Mayor Terrio.
Deputy Mayor Terrio?
Terrio can move the motion. And Conseiller Bourgeois seconded.
Excellent.
Oui. And then we're going to go to voting. There you go. Now you can vote.
Oui. No, we're not voting on that. We're voting on the recommendations, all 6 as they are in your council report form. He asked a question. He didn't make any changes, so he had an explanation. He didn't move for any change. So we have now voted on all of them as were presented to us.
Everybody's voted.
And motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
The next item is sidewalk snow clearing plan for 2024 and 2025. And Alexandre Binet and Don Morehouse are here to speak to the item.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So it is our pleasure today to talk about snow once again. As council may remember, during the summer, I think it was, we came forward with a new process to assign new growth after being asked to review some of the criteria. We did do that. And also, I believe Councillor Bourgeois had asked, that's one of the potential 5-year growth plan could be a little bit more ambitious as an option for council to consider. So today, we're going to walk you through some of the information, and I'll start, then Dawn will go specifically on the plan for this coming winter, and then I'll come back and close with a few more remarks. So if we can advance the slides to, let's say number 3. Yeah, this is just the brief agenda. Okay. So in this slide, we already had it earlier this year. So we're just showing a little bit the gap of service that we have between the different zones. You'll note on the column to the right that I called it a recommendation, but it's a mistake. It was we worked through the process in the past few months, and we were debating what to bring to council, and we don't have a recommendation right now that says specifically to follow the AT plan, but if we were to, if council desires to up to follow the recommendation of the AT plan, the active transportation plan, this is how we probably would approach it, but just ignore, if you don't mind, the word recommendation because it doesn't match the recommendation, the CRF, and at the end of the presentation. Next slide, number 4. This is a French slide, number 5. So I just left again the map for all the schools just to show again clearly how many sidewalks are within a walking distance from schools, being a 0.5 kilometer, 1 kilometer, or 2 kilometers. Just to illustrate once again some of the challenges as if council wants us to continue to expand the coverage around the schools. We had agreed we would start focusing on the 0.5 kilometer walking distance, which is, I think, the darkest color in here, yeah, and progressively move toward the outer zones if council desire to continue to expand the service. If we can go to the next slide, and I think Dawn, if Dawn will walk us through the plan specifically for this coming winter, and then I'll come back.
Can you push your button, please, Dawn? Right in front of the mic. There you go.
Okay, yes, Your Worship and Council, we're here to review our development of the 2024-2025 snow sidewalk plan. Just want to make recognition, the GIS people put a huge amount of work in this because it was a different approach this year compared to the past. We're just dealing with individual additions. They had to sort of work around each school. There was 19 schools we looked at over the 4 wards. And each one, they created the half-kilometer walking distance radius. It's not really a radius, but it's an outline, more or less, of how we calculated the sidewalks within that zone. So working down through the plan, I'll just go ward by ward, and that way we'll sort of come up with an overall summary of how the plan's going to change this year. So the next slide, I hit this or... Okay, so this is Ward 1. So once again, we focused around schools starting out. The school around Sunny Bray has additional P3s added to it. There was also some minor citizen requests we took in consideration that had been sort of in the past discussed, and there was one up close to Ecole Champlain. And there was also one off of the ties into the Forest Glen School, that new development up through there. So the Ward 1 actually has a total of additions of 1,113 meters in their program this year. Slide 2 or next ward. Okay. This ward here was obviously had a lot more work to be done around it. So the focus was around the Besborough School, Ecole Saint Bernadette, and the Hillcrest School. Those areas there, obviously an older part of the city where a lot of sidewalks were done only on one side. So this year we're doing on both sides. So the totals for those 3 areas, in the middle there was some overlapping citizen requests, which didn't really cause a conflict for us. So our total network growth for Ward 2 was 232 meters of priority 1 and 8,400 meters of priority 3. Ward 3, that area was fairly well covered off, but we did have some housekeeping items look after around a small citizen request for 73 meters tied into Redwood, and we also had one tied into more or less around up around Chateau for level service change to P2, and also adding a little link there that seemed to be a gap in the service. So the total additions for Ward 3 came to a total of 202 meters. Ward 4, once again, the focus around schools. We had work to do around Ecole Saint Henri and also Forest Glen. All P1s around Saint Henri came to a total of, P3s came to a total of 6,063 meters. and Forest Glen allowed for an additional 1,853 meters. So that ward there saw a fair amount of growth in the sidewalk service. Overall, we are working through the system right now because a lot of these sidewalks weren't plowed in the past. So staff are going out trying to make sure they are plowable as far as there's high blocks they have to grind down and work through that stuff out there. But this winter here, we plan to approach it and see what areas we need a little more work on, but it will be a good plan. So.
I'm sorry, I had turned off my mic. So just to continue here on slide 11, on the potential 5-year growth plan. So this slide is a little bit busy. There's a lot of information, but we didn't want to make the presentation too long by showing each plan in great detail. So on the left column, you have each plan. So one is potentially add no additional resources over the next 5 years. So the only growth you see there in cost is just related to an estimate of the inflation we may see for labor and equipment. Then there is a more classic 5 kilometer per year growth, which would be similar to what I think the city has done for the past decade or so, maybe. So you see the associated cost and coverage, and you'll know that this just about keeps us at the same service level because we add kilometers of sidewalk every year as we build new development. So we have an estimate on this. We could be a little off there, but it's probably pretty close. Then the third section is the active transportation. As you may remember, that active transportation plan was suggesting that council looks at covering 75% of the sidewalks in the winter, if possible through budget and constraints. So that's a plan that couldn't meet this objective. And the last one, I would call it the ambitious plan, just to go a little further and have it almost all completed in 2029. And each subsection here shows you the percentage of kilometers service of sidewalks. So as a reminder, I think we have around 491, 93 kilometers and counting in the city. So if we have, let's say, 64% done right now, it'd be about 320 kilometers maybe. Then we're showing the additional cost. Any one-time cost there below that would be for the equipment instead of a recurring cost like for manpower. And then we're showing at the bottom the total additional cost. So we're trying to give council as much information as possible. And I think we have even more in the CRF that shows in greater detail what kind of impact it could have on the budget over the next 5 years should council decide to ask administration to guide toward any one of these plans. The slide number 12 is a French version of that same slide. And for the recommendation, the first one is quite easy. I think it's just to approve the subject to any question or changes the council would like. The plan that Dawn and the team prepared with the feedback of council this summer. I think the team has worked really hard to try to make this work well. And the second is a little open. We're not able really to come up to council and make a specific recommendation to follow any one plan because of the implication in the budget. And keeping in mind that any final decisions by council would be done through the budget deliberations, but we certainly would make our life easier for administration if we had an idea of council's vision over the next 5 years, if there would be a preference just to guide us as we prepare budget going forward and, think about our future. So that's, we would really hope to be able to get a bit of a better idea on what council may want to look at in the future. So I think that's a conclusion of our presentation.
Terrific.
Open for question.
Thank you, Alexandre. Thank you, Dawn. So we only have one vote then really on the first recommendation, and then the other one is just to give you an indication. So on the first recommendation, I have Councillor Butler up first. Do you wish to move that?
I do, but I have a question.
Okay, thank you. And then Councillor Bourgeois, do you miss?
Second, and I have questions.
Okay, back to you, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Worship. So maybe Alexander or Don, one of you can answer. Every year I sit down with you guys regards to the sidewalk. It's you don't want to be greedy because somebody else wants some, and it gets, well, okay, you can have this little piece, but we got to save a little bit because there's this new school in another place. But I've always talked is that the last time we got any new equipment for this city, I think was in 2017 or 18. And I remember, because all I wanted was 93 meters, and I think that we ended up with two pieces of equipment. So where are we with the equipment? Like we have to, we as counselors, you know, one of the things that we want is active transportation. Well, sometimes it's out walking also in the neighborhoods, and we have to look forward to the way this city is growing, you know, and, you know, I don't want to just say the North End because, you know, I was out Shediac Road here not too long ago, and it's growing like crazy in Ward 1. But the expansion places are Ward 3 and Ward 1 in the outlying areas. But we still have to, we're building sidewalks, but, you know, what do we need for equipment? We have to be upfront, honest here. What are we looking at?
So thank you for the question. So this current budget 2024, council had given us an additional resource. So we have now in our fleet 16 active machines, 2 spares. And this coming winter, we've added this resource on a pilot basis with a local contractor to see how he could do a certain route. It's to kind of a test because we've been trying to find a new kind of machine. I think maybe council will remember we talked about those mini loaders that are becoming more popular, more versatile. I don't think we want to change the whole fleet to mini loaders, but add them in the fleet progressively. So effectively, we have 17 active units. So we have got one more this year that made up the 17. The prior year, you're correct that we didn't receive any more equipment, so council had to make difficult decision to balance with what we already had. So going forward, this is why we're bringing some thoughts here of what we could be looking at, because if we don't add anything, we'll lose ground, obviously, like you're describing, like I'm showing in the first section there of a slide number 11 and 12. If we don't add any resources, but we continue, as you say, to add sidewalks, the percentage will decline. So it all depending on the wish of council. If council would like to see the city increase its coverage, maintain a coverage, or, you know, maintain costs, this is really what we're trying to understand best. And whatever council is prepared to give us to work with for additional resources, we will factor them in as per the plan we described, like with the new approach to finish the 0.5 kilometer walking buffer to schools. And after this, as I mentioned briefly on the slide number 3 and 4, you know, subject to further discussion in 27, 26, 27, we could maybe bring in a little bit of the hospital zone and the BIA as after we finish the 0.5 kilometer walking distance from the school. But this is further down the road if we ever got to a point like this where council would like to add these kind of resources. So I'm not sure if I am answering your question correctly, Councillor Butler, but it really depends on what council would like us to do.
But, you know, I appreciate that, but in the same token, that's why you guys get the big wages, so you can bring recommendations forward to us, like what you as the people that are in charge that know how the city's growing, where you're lacked of, you know, we look to you guys for, or your personnel to explain to us what you're going to need. You can give us 3 or 4 scenarios, but how do we know 1 is as good as number 4, 2 is as good as 3? You know, maybe what we need is, they had it years ago, they had a snow plan. And maybe that's what we need to go back to. Maybe a couple of councilors sit on a committee with you and come up with a plan, because we can't be playing in between. You know, I realize when you go to finance, you know, somebody else wants something, but, you know, we have to, we're so growing so fast, you know, and if we don't keep up, next thing you know, we're going to be like the RCMP. You're going to become and ask for 17 new pieces of equipment. It's like bylaw, you know, they're not doing this, not doing that, but do they need more people? So we have to stop playing this cat and mouse. If you need them, you got to ask for them.
Well, there's 2 things that council could look at. We have the active transportation plan that's been approved in principle, and that has some guidance there, subject to available financial resources. So that could be one guidance. Certainly, it's been something that's on our mind. As you can see, it's kind of slipped there because we think that kind of could make sense. One of the challenges we have, though, as administration is with all the other budget requests and priorities, it's extremely difficult to be able to, unless the clear understanding the council is prepared and very interested to pursue this with the costs that are shown, like finance made sure that we had very clear costs shown associated with this activity. But there are a lot of different requests, as you know, coming for budget consideration, and this is one more that, yeah, so it's not easy.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci beaucoup, Alexandre.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Alexandre.
Without being here, 16 to 21, I think this is the 7th or 8th model for snow removal, but it's important because it's public safety. It's the way I look at it is we have 5-year-olds who are walking to school unaccompanied by their parents. We do have security guards who help them cross over. That's fine, but God forbid, and we're lucky so far that we haven't had any kids hit by a car or stuff like that. But this is the primary. I like this in the sense that you've refocused not on the downtown and other criteria, but you focused on the elementary school, not the high school. They're big kids. They should be smart enough to know when to cross streets and corners and stuff. But anyways, I like this approach in general, but I do have a bunch of questions, so here we go. Have we ever asked the school districts or the province to tell us how much it would cost them to pick up the kids, elementary school kids, closer to school? Because right now the problem, and we're trying to adapt to a problem that's created by the province, where the province says, we're not going to pick up the kids at 1.2 kilometers from school, or correct me if I'm wrong. Well, okay, there's a part of me that says, yeah, the kids need to exercise. But if public safety overrides exercise, then why don't they pick up the kids, you know, on their way? The bus is going to drive from point A at 1.2 kilometers all the way to the school. So what would it cost them to either add another bus route or whatever to pick up the kids so that all the kids arrive safely at school? Have we ever done that?
No.
I'd be curious to know. I mean, if it's, you know, $20 million, I doubt. But if it's $2 million and we're looking at $2 million, maybe we're looking at the wrong end of the tube. Anyways, maybe in your, whenever we do meet the province or the school district, I'm not sure who decides. Second question related to schools is sometimes, not always, but there's a major storm, okay? And the schools are closed. So my question would be, well, okay, during that storm or maybe immediately following the storm, if we knew that the schools were closed, could you have flexibility to focus on other sectors and then come at the end of the day plowing closer to the school so that by the second day when they reopen the school, you know what I mean? Like we wouldn't focus on the schools immediately if they're going to be closed. We'd focus on something else.
So the way we used to do it, my understanding was we would start the sidewalks only completely after the storm, after we had a good handle on the road, that you may remember, because the resources were largely shared. Now, since council allowed us a few more resources, maybe 3 winters ago already, we've been able to send some machines and some staff directly into the storm, or almost at the same as the road, to open some critical areas which we've identified to be the BIAs, the hospitals, some key places like this. So we're not going to the schools right away, because which school do you go to? And so by the time, it's really helping to get a handle on these key areas. So when we are able now to go with all of the equipment, typically it's not a problem to cover what we have in scope here. We're comfortable to service it in a reasonable amount of time after a storm. I think it should work decently well, unless it's a very severe storm, of course.
Yeah, non, parce que je suis d'accord avec la priorisation, puis etc., mais le bon
No,
sens.
I agree with prioritizing, but I mean, it makes sense. If a school's going to be closed anywhere, let's not rush to go do those sidewalks because more snow can fall and just complicate things further and so on. Okay, I still have a few questions here.
Je vous fais confiance que dans...
I trust you that in the CRF you say
average total...
we can expect slowly decreasing average total snowfall each winter because of climate change. But according to what I've read on climate change is that the storms are going to get worse. Will that affect anything? Possibly. But we're looking at what other municipalities have started doing and living through. There's a lot of challenges. It's not so much snow now, but it's freezing rain, and the sidewalks get iced over. So it's another type of maintenance. And okay, climate change, we won't have to invest. Well, we're not there yet, I don't think, but I'm not an climate expert, but I have the impression that the transition isn't going to be that easy because the no snow, well, it's going to become ice instead. That becomes even more difficult because if the sidewalks aren't well drained, the rain doesn't have, the water doesn't have anywhere to go. So that's why we have to make sure that the teams work through the night to make sure the surfaces are okay. Are we going to have bigger storms? Possibly, but the last 2 years did not certainly show that. They weren't very difficult winters, but it's hard to predict. I don't think we've stopped working during the winter. That's for sure. Yeah, but 2 years ago, it was in January, one storm after another, all of a sudden, and then the rest of the winter wasn't that difficult. And I don't know what the future holds, but have you taken into account the possibility of these bigger storms, major storms, or are you confident with what you have? Well, it's so hard to predict, as you say. We didn't consider the fact that there could be much bigger storms. No, I don't think the trend is going to be that bad, but time will tell. Thank you. And my last question, and it kind of bothers me, and I understand the mayor. She said we're only going to vote on the first paragraph to approve the plan for 2024-25, but number 2 says which of these 5-year plans do we prefer? The second part of the recommendation is on
This is where we're going. And then in year 2, we say, oh, no, we're going to back up and we're going to go with this one. And then year 3, no, we're going to come back to the first one.
I think council always has the possibility to make any change they wish to do during the budget deliberation. Is just, for example, this year, in preparation for this budget, administration didn't have a very clear mandate or understanding of where this, if at all, it would be ranking for council in comparison with other very important priorities such as Kodiak Transpo, for example. So their council may or may not see what they would have liked to see in this coming budget deliberation, maybe because administration didn't have a clear understanding of what council would like to see. So if for next year, let's say we know that council would like to follow, roughly the AT plan, then we would already know we need to put that in, right? So we would put it in unless council would tell us not to, which they could still do that at the deliberation. So.
Ouais, mais si vous achetez beaucoup d'équipements
Yeah, but if you went with a very ambitious plan, you'd buy all sorts of equipment, and then the following year you'd just sit back, or what? No, we don't suggest to go back on our position, but it would be just like ratchet up a bit each year, or unless council decides to really lower the levels of service. But we could do that. But my idea would be, even if we follow the ambitious plan, we wouldn't make any purchases until the budget is approved for the following year. Okay, I agree. I understand. But I'm just going to make a comment here.
big ticket items, $9 million more for the RCMP, possibly, $5-6 million for the, we have priorities and these are 2 big ticket items that one could have the impact. So if there's any way to do both, that'd be great financially, but I'm afraid that so I'd prefer the ambitious one, of course. I think public safety reasons, we should endeavor to move that direction. I have no idea if we can balance the budget, Jacques and Greg, doing it. But anyways, that's my opinion. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Thank you. So are we good to at least vote on the recommendation then for next year? Oh, I thought we had a mover and seconder. Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, Councillor Butler. Yeah. So can we go to that page? And okay. And now we will vote on next year's budget. Excellent. Okay. Motion for next year's budget passes unanimously, but I get it. I don't know what the way forward is to be thinking of, because I get it. You need to have some sort of plan for the future. My opinion would be, I would like to hear from the Active Transportation Committee and sort of what, or be refreshed on what they were suggesting. And I mean, we don't really have, my opinion again, I don't think there's any way we can't do at minimum your second row. Like we have to increase because our city is growing. But I don't think I have a firm grasp of what the active transportation plan even was suggesting. Like, are they talking about plowing, bike trails and that sort of thing? Is that part of it? Or is it all of our trail system? Is that included in that? Or is that not even part of it? Is it just sidewalks? Like, I don't really know what we're talking about here.
I've remembered the sidewalk network for sure at 75% in 27 and growing from there. I think that Leslie was here a number of weeks ago. Did she not present a little bit on the update on the active transportation plan? So there's more. There was, the trails are also a big component. We do some of the trails, maybe not all of the trails. Yeah, and the 27 is coming very quickly. We to be able, if council wanted us to be able to achieve this target, it would be, we only have 2 years, so it's coming very quickly.
So how do we make an informed decision on something like this to give you the guidance that you're seeking?
Well, finance always like to think that we make these decisions as a whole during the budget deliberation to make sure council has all of the other priorities in front of them when making the decision, which is what hopefully we'll be able to look at in a few weeks from now. So there may or may not be, again, resources or the resources that council would like to see regarding snow. The council can always make the change right then as well. So this is no problem. But next year we'll have the same challenge as administration to see, would council like us to work towards something? And that would be very helpful, even if it's not today, that we're able, maybe through Leslie, Leslie can come back more of with a winter lens on it, maybe to kind of, I don't know, if that might help council to further understand like where they may want to go. We could probably take that away, Nick, and see if Leslie could come back with really like winter specific more so, maybe, I'm not sure.
I think that's probably a good idea to come back with that, and a little, like, there's some good data here, but it's just numbers. Like, it's really hard. It's not really telling the story of what it really means. So
expensive.
Well, besides that, if it's values driven and our values are that we want our city to be active, well then it also needs to be data informed. So we probably need a bit more here. Anyway, are we good with that? I think we already voted. Yeah. So I think we're good. But Councillor Bourgeois had a couple of items he wanted to bring forward.
Councillor Bourgeois, your first item was crosswalks.
Oh, sorry. That's me. You have to press your button. Yeah. There.
Yeah, I'll just, since we're pressed for time, I'll just do one of the two crosswalks. I had a couple of citizens ask me, it's something that circulated on Facebook as well. There was sidewalks for veterans or poppies stuff. Could we have, in addition to the LGBTQ2 sidewalks, rainbow sidewalks, in other crosswalks painted in honor of, veterans, poppies, whatever, cancer. I don't know how many. I don't know, but I'm sure that there are many cities who paint sidewalks different, I'll call them brands, or different recognitions. Could we explore that so that by next spring, in addition to the LGBTQ, we might have additional sidewalk crossings, recognizing other causes, for lack of a better word. So it'd be a request, depending on what the rest of council says, but a request to staff to think that one through and come back by, next spring, so that when the decorations, for lack of a better word, are about to be painted, we would know which ones to do where. Merci.
Thank you. Were there any comments on that? I would just add that I know that right now there's a big discussion around lighting and how we light and how we celebrate different things. Perhaps it could be part of that discussion. I don't know. Did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Sorry, cut you off. Do it again. Sorry. Promise I'll get better at this. There we go.
I think that's a great suggestion. We can look at it more holistically. So yeah, we can look at that.
Excellent. So I think that concludes today's agenda. I would take a motion to adjourn. Yay. Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. And well, thank you very much, everyone.